Please watch your step to the stand, please. Clerk, raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court in the case now hearing to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
May I go?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us late in the afternoon, Sergeant Lang. I'm going to direct your attention to your relationship with the Albert family and some of the members of the Albert family. Do you know who Tim Albert is?
Yes,
Do you know who Chris Albert is?
yes.
Do you know who Brian Albert?
Interrupt. I just need your name for
Oh.
the
I'm so sorry. Can you please state your name and spell your name for the record, please?
Michael Lank, L-A-N-K.
Michael, comment spelling?
Yes,
I'll start over. Do you know who Tim Albert is?
I do.
And do you know who Chris Albert is?
I do.
And do you know who Brian Albert is?
I do.
How do you know Tim Albert?
I know Tim Albert to be one of the younger brothers of the Albert family
How long have you known Tim?
since childhood.
What about Chris Albert?
Yes, I know Chris
How long have you known Chris?
since childhood.
And how would you describe your relationship with Chris Albert?
Chris and I were pretty good friends growing up, right into our 20s. Still friendly when I see him.
Still socialize with him?
No,
When did you last socialize with Chris Albert?
I couldn't tell you the last time I personally socialized with him. I've seen him at events, but Chris and I don't make arrangements to go out together.
What about Brian Albert?
No.
How would you describe your relationship with him?
Civil,
Friendly?
exchange pleasantries when I see him. Hello.
But you're closer to Chris. Have you ever described yourself as being a longtime, quote unquote, drinking buddy with Chris?
No.
Would you describe yourself previously, in years past, as being a drinking buddy with Chris?
No.
Have you ever gone out for drinks with Chris?
Not in years.
Ever?
Yes,
So you socialize with him in circumstances in which y'all are drinking and imbibing.
it's been many years, but yes.
Your relationship with Chris certainly goes all the way back to 2002.
Again, we were friendlier back then. Yes.
Right. Back in 2002, in August, while you were off duty, were you out either drinking with Chris or in some way at a restaurant or bar with Chris?
No.
Were you close in proximity to Chris when he was out drinking in a bar?
No,
Was he at a restaurant?
I don't know where he was.
Were you at a bar?
I was.
At some point, did you realize that Chris was getting into some sort of physical altercation with somebody else in a parking lot?
Yes.
Did you jump into a fist fight in order to protect Chris Albert?
Chris actually approached my vehicle and started to describe an altercation that he had been in previously in the night.
When you say your vehicle, your personal vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, so you were off duty, is that right?
Yes.
You've been drinking?
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that, but it
Yes.
just happens that you've been drinking that after.
Yes.
Tim Albert was with Chris, correct?
Not when I saw him, no.
Ultimately, when you realized that Chris Albert was in some sort of fracas, some sort of fight or altercation, you activated yourself as a police officer at the time.
He wasn't in a fracas when he approached my vehicle. He approached my vehicle and stated that he had been in an altercation earlier in the night with one of the Lapalato brothers, and that during that altercation, threats were made against him and his family, and he was seeking advice because he knew I was a police officer as to how he should go forward. And as I was telling him what to do, that's when a group of men started to walk down Washington Street towards Chris, and he said, "Oh no, here they come."
So that would be Mark Lapalato, correct?
Yes,
And his brother Alfred.
yes, Alfredo.
Alfredo, sorry. You got out of your car and approached the other men.
Yes.
You also called for a Canton police backup.
I brought my attention to the restaurant owner and a bartender who had walked out into the street, and I yelled for them to call the Canton police.
Canton police did in fact arrive, correct?
They did.
Isn't it true that after you got involved and Canton police arrived, you then instructed some of your colleague police officers to handcuff Alfredo?
I can't recall.
Is it true that after Alfredo was handcuffed and, for all intents and purposes, physically incapacitated, you then approached Mark Lapalato?
No.
You got into a fight with Mark Lapalato, don't you?
Yes.
You punched him in the face?
At one point after he had struck me, yes.
So your story is he struck you first, and then you punched him.
Yes.
His story, of course, is you punched him first.
I don't know what his story is.
Well, you were sued in federal court, and he told you his story in that lawsuit, correct?
So I actually have a question. The criminal case was adjudicated. The civil case, I did sign a non-disclosure, so I'm not sure if I can speak on that.
I will never ask you what the nature of any settlement in that case was. Just the fact that you were sued in a public document, which a federal lawsuit is a public document. You were sued in federal court over this incident that I'm talking about, correct?
Yes,
And ultimately it was settled. I'll never ask you what the terms of the settlement are. That's
it
fine.
was settled, yes.
Okay. Ultimately, you said that the criminal case was adjudicated. We'll get to that in just a second. Did you testify at that criminal case?
I did.
All right. I want to sort of tailor this a little bit because we're on a little bit of a time crunch and I want to be sensitive to the court's time and your time. The allegation that Mark Bederow made against you is that you punched him, took him to the ground, continued to beat him, and bit him to the point of drawing.
Bit him. You bit him. Welcome, live Young Jerks tonight. What a day of testimony. It started with talking about Katie McLaughlin, which was like the story of the whole weekend since her testimony. And then today, the police, which we were expecting, Michael Lank right at the end, Bev making a decision at the end. It seems like we got the all-star dream panel back. Welcome back, Attorney Mark Bederow.
How are you?
Great. How you doing?
Very good.
And Mazza Media. Are you there? Did we mute him? We lost him. Okay. Well, I'm not sure what's up with Mazza Media. Maybe he dropped off because he got that Michael Lang put him to sleep. I don't think I was like at the edge of my seat even watching that a second time. Like there's more to that video. What did you think about the day today, Mark Bederow?
Another disaster for the prosecution from beginning to end. It starts with their most important witness thus far being called a perjurer, which she probably is and will be exposed further. Then you get into the police or Canton police version of securing a crime scene, which is beyond words, which I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail, but they completely destroyed the case as it relates to the impact of any forensic evidence. And, like all what they're going to claim if there's blood or DNA on the back of the car. I mean, it was left unattended where a certain detective from the state police named Trooper, could have had access to it, which fits right in with their narrative. You have other cops who come in and clearly don't follow what I think any normal person who does this for a living and any juror, more importantly, would say is they didn't follow protocol, leave a lot of doubts. If that's not bad enough, you then have all kinds of what I would call odd coincidences, which in the normal case, you might say don't mean a hell of a lot. But when the defense is alleging a very serious conspiracy to frame Karen Reed, all of a sudden you start thinking of these coincidences and they don't make sense. The wrong address to send the job to, misspelling people's names, not putting in the name Brian Albert, not putting in Higgins or his address, omitting Colin Albert. I mean, it goes on and on.
The
and
Chief Wiggum Berkowitz, who
Chief Wiggum Berkowitz. Well, they tried.
Came up today, and one of the weird things he did related to all that stuff, the names.
Right.
You know about this? He called the newspaper reporter and tried to have
no bias there.
Brian Albert's name.
Well,
with
Brian's he's a good man. He's an Albert of Canton, so you really shouldn't report this. And when that comes out, the idea of the chief of police of town calling a reporter, telling them, don't write stuff about, a good boy in our town who's alleged to have been involved in this just hideous frame job of Karen Reed. And then if all of this isn't bad enough, you end the day where you're listening to, one of the main officers first on the scene, who turns out he's essentially an Albert for all intents and purposes. I mean, to listen to him get involved in multiple criminal incidents and run to the Albert's house, and he's willing to, break teeth and do this. And you watch this, and when he starts talking about, it was the Lapolito brothers, I have to tell you, as I was watching it in the background this afternoon while I was preparing for my own trial, I laughed out loud because I thought I was watching The Godfather. It was like, it was those Rosado brothers, what I'm talking about? I mean, this
It
is,
reminds me of like the Irish people, Irish, like all these cops too. They like faces all get red, like they're all Irish.
I
Like
got to
me.
tell you, and look, as you know, I grew up not too far away from Canton, but I had no idea that, I mean, everyone's watching this case across the country. And let's be honest, this is not portraying Massachusetts or Canton in particular in a very good light. I mean, this is the most stereotypical bunch of meathead massholes. I can say that because I'm from there, like all of, or most of you. It's insane. I mean, what's going on here? So it was another terrible, terrible day for the prosecution. And I'm starting to think that, as you know, initially I thought, I don't know how they could have indicted her. Said last week, this is certainly going to be an acquittal. I have no doubt in my mind. I'm now seriously considering something I threw out there a week or two ago, which is I'm not sure they're going to make it to the finish line. I mean, this is that bad already, and everything they've done has blown up in their face. Everything.
It's been unbelievable. Even today with Lank, they tried. Adam Mullally tried the. I don't know what he did. He arrested him or cited Tim Albert in a bad car crash that he hit and run somebody and went back to the same address, 34. So it's so funny that, and then he just went right back at him. The defense went right back at him about the, did you give him a breathalyzer? Did you give him a drug test?
No.
That like blew up in their face. Like the one thing that Lally actually seemed like he had planned today, it made it even worse.
I got to tell
Defense
you,
was ready for it.
If you would have told me that in the case of the century, certainly in Norfolk County, Massachusetts, everybody's watching it. It's on court TV. There's people everywhere that are into this, and obviously the whole Karen Reed movement and all that. If you would have told me that a case of this magnitude that had been prepared over the course of a couple of years, that we would all be watching live video introduced by the prosecution of a lieutenant who is probably worse than Chief Wiggum. I haven't come up with a name for him. Video of him with the leaf blower.
And the red Solo Cups, you like that
a
one?
leaf blower, the red Solo Cups, and of course the big winner of the day is Stop and Shop with the free advertising.
And how about he was thoughtful enough to tell them to take pictures, but did you see the pictures?
Pictures. I mean, honestly, so the guy takes about 8 pictures, every single one of them, which is blurry. None of them really even show virtually anything. And then when he takes a picture of like the house and the cars, it never occurred to him, maybe get the license plates. I mean, are you interested in doing anything? But, you know, you saw a lot of pictures of white snow, which is great. A little pink hue there and there. And then he tells you with a straight face, you know, I've in 30 years, I've never had a crime scene in the snow. Okay, maybe that's true. So rather than call the state police right away and say, get out here, I have a dead police officer on the lawn of another police officer, and he's got the crap kicked out of him. He's got one shoe on. Nothing makes any sense. Nobody's coming out of the house. Naturally, what he thought to do was, let me get some red Solo Cups and start scooping the blood out of the snow. And then I'm going to make sure I, you know, find a dirty Stop and Shop bag. And the pièce de la résistance and all of this is when I get there, after I'm done or having others under my watch shatter the light and make it even worse, right? Where they kind of bang into the tail light and make it worse. Let me make sure I leave all of O'Keefe's blood lying around so that when Proctor, who's famous for, you know, looking for nudes, being a misogynist, getting gifts from the Alberts and telling his buddies, don't worry, he's a cop, I'll protect him, has access to this bag. This is such a shit show.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
So
the other side is pretending they're still winning. Mazza Media, are you still alive? Did they black flag you?
I'm still I'm still here. So I'm sitting here getting ready for the show with you guys, and I say to myself,
you were here and then you weren't.
Well, I know. I realized that I needed some water, so I said I went up to my kitchen and I said I'm out of red Solo Cups, so I had to leave. So I went to my local Stop and Shop, and you're not going to believe it, they were out of brown paper bags. Brown paper bags were all gone at the store. So finally, I was going to leave the store, And then I look at the hardware store next door. They get a sale on leaf blowers right now because it's spring. So I've just been that 5 to 10 minutes I was gone. This is what I was up to. It was all about red Solo cups. It was all about shop and stop bags, and it was all about leaf blowers. And you know what? The thing of it was, some kid in a skateboard, when I was backing up, was skateboarding by, and I bumped into him, and my taillight shattered into 45 pieces. I couldn't believe it.
It's unbelievable.
The kid's arm looked like he had been attacked by a damn German Shepherd, Mike.
Well done. Well
Oh
done.
man, that was amazing, dude. That we gotta. Oh my god,
Well
you're
done.
killing me, Mazza. That was amazing. Oh, very well done,
It was
bro.
unbelievable. And then the cop shows up and he goes, "Well, I can't. Where's the taillight?" I go, "Look under the snow. Just use the leaf blower I just bought. You should be able to clear it up. It should be there." It's like it's May. I go, "I know, but it's under the snow. Just look." What a
We gotta
joke.
have some comedy today. We gotta have some comedy.
I gotta loosen it up. I'm like, we gotta humor our way. Like I said on my show last night, we gotta humor our way through this thing sometimes because this story is every day is so intense. It really is. It's so intense. There's a lot of suspense and like today I went through like a lot of different thoughts, and it's just the leaf blower thing of it in itself. I looked at that footage and I'm waiting for like the third and fourth clips I was really waiting for. And I'm like, okay, that red taillight, let's see if it emerges. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. And I'm just like, then it just end of clip. You would think if they had found that taillight that they just would have played that video right along. That folder that they showed had 4 clips. That was it, nothing more. So I guess
clips of leaf blowing.
that's it. And things like moving really slow. It's like zzz, it's like Austin Powers trying to bet. It's like that guy in Austin Powers, the security guard. He's like, no, and then Austin Powers is driving like 5 miles an hour at him. It was like that. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say the worst part of it is, and they know this is. I mean, look, the DA knows the evidence, and they know theoretically what they're doing, but they tried last week with the I hit him, and that really fell flat. All right. I mean, maybe some people think perhaps she said it. Maybe she said, did I hit him? They're inconsistent. Katie's a liar. It all started with her and she knows the Alberts. Okay. That's when you look at a reasonable doubt standard, that was a big net loss for them last week. And they come in today, and the biggest thing they're going to have is, the forensics, the car, right? The tail light is smashed. We have glass that's probably embedded in it. We have glass at the crime scene. We've heard suggestions of DNA or blood that matches O'Keefe. And you hear stuff like that and you say, well, that, if that's true, that's kind of tough to explain. And then it hits you and you say, oh, okay. So the taillight works like this. They didn't find any after leaf blowing where they actually were proud of themselves. They said it worked well. We got right down to the curb. We got down to the grass. Okay. That's actually not a good fact for them, believe it or not, because then why didn't you find all the other stuff that, the Proctor crew would find a few days later? Okay, fine. Then you go to the fact of well, how did we collect the blood? And it's like little kids on a beach scooping sand. I mean, this is unbelievable. So already that sounds terrible, but the real terrible part of this is then you find out that they left the blood open, unsecure, not sterile, lying around in the area where Proctor, we know, had access for a couple hours unaccounted for. And lo and behold, he's going to find the blood on the car. And the Chief Wiggum stuff is coming with, I found taillight too.
Yeah.
And
wasn't it remarkable about the snow? And they were cross-examining Gallagher about the blood samples. He's like, well, it was in snow. It's like, well, doesn't the snow like melt and then you can get a DNA sample out of there? It was just like,
well, here's the worst thing about this guy. He says later, after he's trying to defend, this is the best we could do. He was asked, I mean, maybe this fell flat and people didn't jump out of their chair at this, but he says later, I don't know much about processing homicide scenes. It's not what I do.
Exactly.
So here's an idea. Find someone who does.
Right.
Like
correct.
The state police. Now, preferably not a corrupt trooper from the state police who happens to be a friend of Brian Albert and all of that. But putting that corruption angle aside, Why wasn't the first call to say, bring in the state police? This is a dead police officer on the lawn of another dead police officer in the snow. And it's like a double whammy. I don't process homicides, and I've never had a snow crime scene, which, by the way, 30 years in Massachusetts, you've never had a crime scene in the snow. It's kind of hard to believe, but whether it's true or not, the bottom line is you're basically saying, I don't know what I'm doing, which, fine, find someone who does. And they didn't. Instead, he just says, we'll do it this way. And when you saw that they left the blood open within a foot or two of the car, does the DA not understand how stupid they are in the manner in which they presented this case and the consequences of that testimony today? Because the defense got out first, okay? Before they've even had a chance to say, aha, we have O'Keefe DNA on the car. The jury already knows, well, yeah, dummy, because your dope cops put it in Solo cups in the Stop and Shop bag and left it a couple of feet away from the car where the corrupt trooper came in and probably did it.
Yeah.
I mean, they already know that.
Yeah.
Before the
And they have access. It's like they're making the case for them. And this is the funniest thing about this whole thing is you can already see the defense's theories, and these are supposed to be the best prosecution witnesses. Like, this
you mean it's not going to get better with the McCabe's and Albert?
Right?
That's not going to help the case.
It's just like they're already establishing every day. It's like another scandal, like the Lank stuff. We're talking about Gallagher.
Lank stuff was huge.
I felt like Gallagher, like I had heard that he might be the one that would be the one most likely to tell truths.
Let me tell you how that guy defines truth. If Adam Lally tells me that's what happened,
right?
Have you ever heard a more ridiculous?
No. Yeah.
The laughter in the background was incredible.
I mean, the guy's been a distinguished cop, whatever that means, in Canton for 30 something years. And at the end of the day, he says, I'm just a sheep who follows Lally to tell me what's true.
He kind of did tell the truth.
Yeah, but I mean, he just
and like I felt like I felt like a couple times he brought up Berkowitz, right? Like I felt like he brought up Berkowitz because he's pointing at Berkowitz, like subliminally, like without even.
Oh no!
Did you see that? What did
I thought at the end what they were trying to do was weasel in the Berkowitz. Look what I found through the hearsay of Gallagher to try to avoid calling Berkowitz, and of course it's classic hearsay, and it was properly, kept out.
Even before that, there was a moment where he just brought up Berkowitz's name. As he said, they were like, and they changed the subject. It was like before that part. Did you hear that, Mazza?
I don't recall that. I recall him saying something about other police forces, like at the state level.
He was talking about a meeting that they had, like some kind of like. I think it was about where he brought the blood or something like that. I want to listen back to that. I just feel like Berkowitz. I keep feeling like he's going to be at the center of this.
There were so many weird things. I mean, and then, the one guy with a straight face says there was nothing odd at all about, an ATF agent who hangs out in our office at 1:30 in the morning. 1:30 in the morning on Saturday wants to come in to work. Oh, did I forget to mention he was at 34 Fairview
when
exactly. It happened, and he was asked, and he says, yeah, nothing weird about that.
Yeah.
Sergeant Good, that's who that was. Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. You got Gallagher here. He's like, well, Jackson asked him, he goes, well, is there any reason why you guys didn't search the house? And he goes, well, there was no probable cause.
Yeah,
the only probable cause you need is that there is a dead body on the front lawn that is exactly on this property.
And it's a cop. It's a cop at a cop's house. Yeah, every judge would do that, right?
They would. And it's even worse because look at the way he's found. And again, if you divorce yourself from it had to be Karen, the tunnel vision that, all of these people had. But so you have a guy, and the first thing that jumps out is he's not dressed properly. Okay. He's not dressed for the cold. He's missing a shoe. He has, all kinds of indicia of being beaten up or suffering severe trauma. And, he's on the lawn of another cop. You're told, by the way, and this is what's also fascinating to me, at the time that, at some point McCabe tells them that, well, he never came in, but he was supposed to. In other words, he was here and he was supposed to come in our house. And there isn't a judge in America, okay, who's not taking those facts and saying, I'm going to allow a search. Now, but even if you, I think what he said after that was even worse and more pathetic, if that's possible, which is, if he really thought he didn't have probable cause, by the way, you could, I don't know, call the DA's office. And again, like I told you the other day, they would do in New York, but put that aside, knock on the door. And he says, oh, no,
Yeah, he didn't even ask.
I don't want to seek consent because they might say no.
Right.
This is Lieutenant of the Year. I don't want to upset the
when are police afraid to ask a question because someone might say no?
How about this? And again, this is how ridiculous this all is. He knows the people who live there. They're cops.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Cops
why
are the
I
most
asked.
skeptical people on the planet, and that's okay. But cops are the kind of people who say, well, why won't they let me come in? They're hiding something. And then if the person you're asking to come in is a cop and he says, no, you can't come in here. That's not weird to you in light of what's going on
That's
here?
when you take it to a judge. That's a good sign. That's called gathering intelligence. It's how cops actually do their job, right?
But even good, undermined him and said, of course we should have gone in there and tried to figure out what, kind of, he didn't go where they perhaps should have gone. But this idea that a lieutenant supervising the scene had no interest to know why he might be on their lawn, dressed inappropriately, clearly suffering all kinds of trauma to his body, knowing that John O'Keefe was supposed to be there and was supposed to go in the house. The claim was he didn't. And I guess, in Canton, that's enough.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah. Another thing, nothing to see. Mazza, Kevin Linehan kept saying so many things wouldn't happen. No true bill, on the federal grand jury. He said the third-party defense would never be viable or even presented in court. He said the Brian Wanless will never come up. Sean McDonough, Peter Murphy, like these guys have been knocking it out of the park, where Kevin's like 0 for 100. Why is he on court TV tonight? What do you think about all that?
No one else wanted to go on that side. I think also they have very few people on that side that are as invested as people on our side are. We have over 30,000 people that are heavily invested in this on our side. On their side, it's a handful, it's a dozen, 2 dozen people maybe. That's about it, and who knows how many actual X accounts actually exist out there. But he's out there. He's he's stating what he believes, and I'm just not a fan of his reenactment video because there's a lot wrong with it.
It's the wrong side of the car.
Wrong side of the road.
How could court
Wrong
TV
side of the
keep
road.
airing that thing? It's Vinny Politano. You're a joke. Court TV, you're a joke. You're airing that thing, and you're not even saying the most basic thing. That's the wrong side of the car.
And the wrong side of the road.
And I think a lot of the reasons why these people may stop going on TV too is, for lack of a better term, they're cowards. And what I mean by that is, they can spout and push a narrative, but sometimes, and as lawyers, we see this all the time, you actually get called upon by real journalists to defend your position with what's going on. And, if he were to have to defend this video, which makes no sense, this reenactment that they created, it doesn't fit, it's completely irrelevant. Or, what do you think about the fact that the cops, used solo cups and did this and left it by Proctor and this and that? And what are they going to say? I mean, they're just going to say, yeah, but she said I hit him. I mean, that's the default answer for everything. And I just think they don't have intellectually the ability to defend it in a rational way and try to win over with logic and common sense.
And I think a lot of people on that other side, they're just, they're people that have been caught up in the feud with Turtle Boy for a long, long time. They can't stand him. They've been all about taking him down. They don't like him. Turtle Boy bad, and then I take Kevin's credit to say something positive about him. I think the guy does legitimately believe what he believes, and it's not because of a feud with Turtle Boy. I'll give him that much, that's about it. But I think he's one of the few on that side that's, legitimately believes what he believes, even though we disagree with what he believes and all that. I think the guy legitimately believes what he believes. But I would just recommend to him, if you're going to have your video played on court TV, at least line it up with the right side of the road and the right tail light, and at least get those things in. And shame on Court TV for even playing that.
That's who you blame. That's Court
Yeah.
TV.
Ridiculous.
That's pathetic.
It's pathetic.
Oh, look at this. And you get people watching this for the first time that are new to this case. And they're thinking that this video's, they're not even probably thinking it's done by him. They think it's probably done by Court TV. This is Court TV's reanimation, and they're watching this for the first time and they're saying, oh man, wow, look at that. And I forgot to say, it's not even the right vehicle.
Yeah. It shows how
they would-
implausible
yeah.
if they did it the right way with the right side of the car, it'd show how implausible it is. Because, he wouldn't go all the way over the curb into the yard if
Right.
it's, it's the wrong side of the car. He couldn't do it the right way because it's so implausible.
Right. Oh, it's crazy. And then, it's just so outrageous, that video. And like I said, shame on Court TV for even playing it, because it's not a plausible reenactment of that theory that he has. It's not even, it's just all wrong. It's just totally off.
This is funny. This is a funny comment about it too, which is funny. Like the lack of pull for Court TV. I think they're a bunch of morons. If they want numbers, they should be having Turtle Boy and Sean McDonough, Melanie Little,
Julie
even
Grant,
myself, even
Julie
myself,
Grant,
or you,
Julie,
or the attorney here, Bederow. Like, there's so many people they should be having on, not the idiots, because we're leading. Like, look at this right here. Like, he's on Court TV every night. We got 10 times the numbers that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's not helping Kevin. Kevin's on Court TV every night. His numbers aren't going up. He's still at the same numbers. We had the best month ever on this channel, and then the best last 3 or 4 days like we've never had. It's amazing. And so they're losing. They are losing badly. In Court TV, they're just showing how weak they are. Like I don't understand why they're not having Turtle Boy on every night. Like, if I was booking that show, I would have Turtle Boy, Melanie Little, Sean McDonough every night, Olivia Nile. There are stars here. Like, this is what we do on this show.
Right.
It's easy. Court TV is missing the boat.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And
Mark Bederow, Mazza Media.
That's right. That's the trio right there. Mr. Mike himself, the young jerks. Yeah.
That's right.
And Julie Grant, she's been nothing but an actress for Court TV. She gets up there. We know that there's footage of her a year ago that, oh my goodness, it seems like she's innocent. Now it's just this big actress performance every single time she's on there. And I see Nick Rocco's name dropped in the comments. I said this on my show yesterday. I'll say it again here. I hope that Nick Rocco on that show, next time he's on there with them, whether it's tonight or another night, that he just goes out and says everything's wrong with that reenactment video and just absolutely outs it on television right in the middle of that debate. I would love to see that. I hope that gets back. Tell him, if you guys see Nick Rocco, tell him what I said. Tell him to just say, hey, look, everything's wrong with your video that you're showing. It's on the wrong side of the road. It's the wrong vehicle. It's the wrong taillight. And furthermore, there was nobody there when she backed up. She didn't back up at all, I should say. And he got beaten up and dragged outside anyway. So I guess it's all wrong, no matter how you fix it. But the taillight video with the leaf blower, I just can't get over today. It's just unbelievable. It's like I'm waiting for it to uncover, oh yeah, there's red shiny objects under there. And then the video just kind of ends. It's like, well, if there's taillight there, don't you think that you would have filmed it? Or are you guys just basically clipping it to make it seem like you're fitting a narrative? I'm not, it's just, it's deceptive editing is what it is. It is deceptive editing. And it was just ridiculous that was even presented in court. If you're gonna play that video, the purpose is to actually show us the taillight and say, there it is right there. But the reason why is because there was no taillight there at that time.
If the goal of the prosecution, which it has to be, I mean, they have the burden of proof, and it's a tough case anyway. They have to inspire confidence in the jury in the integrity and credibility of the investigation, both in terms of our motives and we're behaving properly, but also that the quality of the evidence, right down from the way it was collected, the way it was stored, the way it was analyzed, and look, we're sorry, but she's guilty because of X, Y, and Z. And what they put out there today, and basically put the nail in the coffin before they've even tried to get into the real forensics on the car, on this, on that, is that already you should be discounting it. I mean, to put on that spectacle today in the way that these guys gathered evidence, and then even then didn't recover anything, and it took Proctor to find it. And I mean, when they come in, assuming Proctor testifies, And he says, I found, I found the tail light that nobody else did. I don't know if you guys are like James Bond film people like I am, but it reminds me of that
I am.
scene from Goldfinger where Odd Job finds the golf ball that he drops down his pants and he says, look, here it is. And he says, oh, there it is.
Yeah, I remember
That's
that.
what this
Yeah.
feels like.
Yeah.
And the defense, even though the jury doesn't know that's really coming, the defense has already laid the foundation for why you can't believe anything they're going to tell you about the actual physical evidence. And this has become an impossible task for them. I mean, I think it was virtually impossible when the trial started, but it's reached a point where how do you resolve this and say there's no reasonable doubt in my mind, there's no plausible theory other than because, she said, I hit him, which, have you noticed is on like none of the recordings, by the way, and all the
Right.
recordings
No recordings.
and everything else show
No
you like,
reports.
really, really distraught woman who can't find her boyfriend, which is
Right.
totally natural and normal. And you'd have to believe that she's so organized and careful that she put this into motion. And, I'm going to back into his truck and make sure I blow out my taillight. And then I'm going to call my friends with this fake story of, I don't know where he is. And I'm going to fake these tears and all of this. I mean, you can allege that, but that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, that's embarrassing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they tried to criticize Karen today. There was someone that was live streaming. I won't say their name, but they were criticizing Karen for not crying when Mrs. O'Keefe was crying, and I completely emphasize, whatever the word is. I sympathize with her.
Empathize.
Empathize. Can't even say it tonight. With her, it's her son. This is difficult
course.
to hear. It's tragic, but they're saying, why doesn't Karen do the same thing? Well, the situation is different for Karen. Karen's being blamed for all this, and her she's never had an opportunity to mourn because what
That's
little
right.
time she did was quickly skewed into being basically considered a murderer, an alleged murderer here. So yeah, she's just kind of at a point where I'm fighting for my own life at this point. Ever since this happened, I've been blamed for this. It's not true. And, at this point, how can she cry? It's she misses John. She loves John. And she was the most, like they testified today, they section 12'd her because of how animated she was after it happened. It's just, that's why she's not crying. And anybody to say, why is Karen not crying and criticize her for that? Don't understand the bigger picture here of what's going on. This trial is happening, and she is the one that is the defendant here. There is nobody else that is being investigated for the death of John O'Keefe but her in terms of this trial. And how can she sit there and be crying about anything when she's fighting for her life here? She hasn't had the opportunity to mourn.
I mean, you know what that I'm sure the real frustrating part amongst other things too is, you just said she's being tried and no one else was, looked at or being investigated, but they never even bothered, even though there were a ton of red flags at a minimum that a serious prosecutor, a serious police department, or in this case, departments at a minimum would have looked into this. And the only agency that's looking into this is the U.S. attorney and the FBI, way after the fact. And, anyone who doubted why they were doing that, it's pretty obvious because, there's a lot of smoke here about all of this. And the reality is to have to sit in her chair and wonder, am I going to prison for the rest of my life? When you have these just cops who are just awful get up there and, say, we never looked in there. We never went. I had no right to. I wasn't anything. I changed his name. We changed the address, all this other stuff. And even a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, 6 months later, no one had the courage in the DA's office or any of these police agencies to say, are we really going to do this without, at a minimum, being satisfied that it couldn't be someone else? And I hate to beat a dead horse, but, in a real prosecutor's office, that was always part of the analysis. You're not charging with someone, for murder unless you can exclude everyone else. This isn't a game of we hope we get the right guy. And if not, we'll send him away and what's for dinner. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Right.
And that's how they're doing it. I mean, you know what, even their own seriousness of purpose here. You heard the lieutenant testify today. Yeah, the first time I spoke to anyone about this was the DA a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Exactly. No
Really?
reports. No, it didn't speak to anybody. I mean, come on.
I mean, what are they doing? If you believe it, which I kind of do actually, because
Actually
this
do
is
too.
thrown together. But they're not even serious in what they're doing. It's just they have so much power, but they don't have the prosecutorial maturity, judgment, and discretion to use it properly. And they should all go when this is over, all of them. I mean, this really is horrible what they're doing.
What do we expect for tomorrow?
Well, history teaches you another shit show, I assume. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, what are they going to do? At
What do
some
you
point,
think,
they're
Mazza?
going to have to call the people that they're going to have to hold their nose and call these people, right? I mean, I got the impression that some of the Alberts, including, the acquaintance, was coming up soon this morning, is what it sounded like.
Yep.
Yeah, we know that Katie McLaughlin's going to get called again at some point. It appears Auntie Bev seemed to be open to that, which was good. But it looks like Caitlin Albert's due up first, but they want to get Katie up there before
No
they
way.
get Caitlin up there.
Katie's done. She's not going to testify. They're not
Not
going to
gonna testify.
I don't. The reason they're not going to
Yeah.
now the reason they wouldn't do that is because
Oh,
they
not
have-
recall Katie? Okay, yeah.
I mean, she's
They already won.
why even give her a chance to even try
Salvage
to
it, yeah.
explain? She's destroyed. She's toast. And the thing with these, like the new round of pictures, those are going to come in through Caitlin
With Caitlin.
for a
yeah.
couple of reasons. Number one,
Yeah, that's a good point.
they're, for all intents and purposes, recently discovered. I mean, they got them over the weekend, from the internet or whatever. But the point is, the whole argument of Lally, I didn't know and I didn't get noticed. The defense is saying, we just found out, we're going to make an offer of proof. And, that one picture of the baby shower in particular, that's not cumulative. That is a couple of 6 or 7 months before the murder, right? And it's a baby shower. That's
I heard it was like within the last couple of years, but yeah. When was that Mazza meeting? You know, that new one, the baby shower?
21. I think
June
it
of
was
2021 at it was a college or a college house or something like that. Yeah.
No, that was the other one.
no,
That
the
was the
baby
other one? Oh.
shower. The
There's
baby
two of them.
shower was
That was
about
like-
7 months prior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's close. That's close in time.
Yep. Yep.
And there's no question that, Caitlin will
Okay.
say, yeah, we're friends for a couple of reasons. One, because the evidence is overwhelming. Doesn't mean they have to be best friends and, all of that, but they're clearly more than I went to high school with her and I don't really do
Exactly.
much else. And number two, there's just the reality of what's going on here. If you're her and you're watching what happened to McLaughlin, I
Yes.
mean, in some ways it's pathetic and sad because she's probably the least
Culpable.
of
Yeah.
all the people who maybe are fudging things. She didn't volunteer for this. She got approached. I'm sure they, leaned on the relationship. I'm speculating, but it also makes perfect sense to me, and starts the narrative about what was said. Unfortunately for her, it's the cop turns out to be the Seraph guy who says that's not what I heard, which is also another problem for them. But I think if you're Caitlin Albert, you're going to give it up. And one of the other reasons why is because she's got bigger problems. I mean, her parents and herself, I suppose, extricated her from this mess at 12:15, conveniently 10 minutes probably before they killed O'Keefe. And then only when the feds came calling did she come clean and say, well, actually, I left at 1:45. So she's got bigger problems to deal with than getting into some kind of ridiculous argument with Karen Reed's lawyers about the definition of what a friend is.
This just gets stickier and stickier. I mean, what if this Lank thing? Because at the end, Lank, what do we call this? Voda or whatever that is, where they just show it for the jury is out of the room.
So voir dire is two things.
Say that again for me. I want to.
Voir dire.
I'm never going to be able to pronounce that.
VOIR.
Voir dire.
French, voir dire.
Voir dire.
So voir dire is for two things. It's for jury selection, they call it voir dire. But during a trial, if there are evidentiary issues that need to be resolved with the taking of evidence, you voir dire the witness so the judge can make a determination on admitting evidence. So you often will see it sometimes when, and you may see it here, I don't know, if one of the parties wants to offer an expert, and they go through all of their typical questions about how qualified they are. And then they say, Your Honor, I move that, that this witness be qualified as an expert. The other side has a right to voir dire the witness and challenge them if it's appropriate, or they may not, or they may just fish on their credentials and ask them about certain things. And if it turns out that the witness is not impressive, then after the voir dire of the witness, you may, I object, whatever. But that's what these evidentiary hearings are today. So, they obviously want to, the defense wants to bring in that the last guy who's one of the first cops on the scene, Lank, is actually, somebody who probably breaks bread with the Alberts on a regular basis because he, jumps into fights with and defends two of them and then runs to their house to hide out or whatever he does.
You're getting a lot of fights, those people.
Yeah,
And
you're getting a lot of fights.
so, Lally obviously wants to object and say, we call this, by the way, the ouch objection. Okay. That's what lawyers say. Lally makes an ouch objection. He has no real reason to object other than this is really bad. So he makes the argument, which ironically the defense has to make. But in this case, up is down and down is up. Usually it's the defense saying, you got to keep this out. It's 20 years old. It doesn't matter. And of course, what Jackson is saying very effectively, as with most things that he's been doing, is that, this totally goes to the heart of our defense. And it shows that one of the cops who started this process of getting stories straight and doing weird things has a decades long relationship, not of just being a friend or acquaintance like Katie,
getting into some shit
but
together.
this guy's up to his neck in the mud, the dirt, the shit with these people. And it really calls into question, what's happening here. And so, of course, look, we're all complaining about the judge and whatever.
But this was good.
She was favorable.
It's
She was
so funny
favorable there too,
because I keep going back and forth on her. Like a lot of people just hate her, but I've been going back and forth with her because
let me tell you something.
And today, right at the end, she got me back again in her corner. She gave us something good. Tell us what that means. What's going to happen next?
Why? Because look, whatever she thinks, whatever the criticism people have levied at her, I'm warming up to a lot of the criticism that people have made. At the end of the day, what does a trial judge want not to happen more than anything else? To get reversed. Okay. That's humiliating. Particularly when you're on court TV and live streamed all over the country and, everyone's calling her, Aunt Bev. And I laugh because I have an Aunt Beverly, by the way. So I always laugh at that. But
it's short for Auntie Beverage in this particular case. Mark.
No, I got it. But I laugh just because in any event, she's been listening to the evidence. And you'll notice that as the day goes on and each day, the sustaining objections as it relates to the weirdness of the Alberts is getting less and less because they're establishing more and more. And there's a lot of things that they're putting out there, which again, in isolation may not sound like much, but there's just too many coincidences for there not to be something. And you have to allow the defense. They have a due process right to put on a defense. And their defense is that these people conspired, they did something terrible, and they're framing the outsider. And it turns out in this case, there's only two outsiders, right? O'Keefe and Karen Reed. And the more you hear about it, you see it. The incestuous relationship between all these Canton people and what they're doing and the way they're covering for people in all these little ways, it's disturbing if you're not part of that. And I think the judge has no choice but to say, I've got to let them at least
Yeah.
put on a defense. Now, will she let them go all the way and argue that these people probably committed murder and this and that? Who knows? But the point is, the door is open wide for the defense to at least say, can you really establish beyond a reasonable doubt that maybe all of these coincidences, many of which we haven't even gotten yet. I mean, the McCabe Google search, the deletions, the phone records, the Apple Watch, you go on, and we haven't even got to the real meat of this to say, is it plausible that something really bad is happening to the outsider? And it's not because that these people are literally psychopaths. It's a much simpler motive, because parents protect their children and they protect themselves. And the bottom line is they don't want to go down for this. They're the Alberts of Canton. Okay. And it's not even so much about maybe trying to frame her to the extent they did. Did they know it would end up in a murder indictment? I don't know. But they wanted to protect their family, I believe. And, maybe she hit him. Maybe it's an accident. They're not exactly legal scholars, I'm sure. Judging by a lot of things they say that we've seen, that they just figured she'll be all right. But, this is on her. And the problem is the evidence doesn't support it. They look foolish. And then you go back to something else. You go back to those Proctor text messages where he said the weirdest thing that anyone has said in this case at all, which is, I wish she would kill herself.
Right.
Okay. And I got to tell you something. And, initially when I heard that, I just thought, like, wow, this guy's a psychopathic, just lunatic. No, he's already said,
He wanted his problem to go away.
That's right. I don't want my friends to go down, but it's hard to frame someone. There's a lot of loose threads and angles, and this could go on. And my God, I just wish she would kill herself. The Alberts get away with it if that's really what happened. And the person who, quote unquote, did this, nobody will look any deeper, right? You stop investigating. And I hate to say it for Proctor, I hate to say it for everyone else who's looking at this as an open and shut case. The context of that text makes perfect sense when you see all the other evidence. And what Jackson and Yannetti are, as I'm not breaking news here, 1,000 times better than Lally at, is building themes, connecting dots between various pieces of evidence. And when the summation comes, they're going to marshal it.
Right.
Pull all of this together and weave the web of, you should be shocked, disturbed, and concerned when the DA is going to sum up and say, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence has established her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt because this witness said that, and this witness said this, and, she's guilty, and thank you. It's just,
right.
It's not going to happen.
And I think it's funny that you brought that up about Proctor, because I feel like we see those threats online a lot from these anonymous accounts. I know Mazza knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we think they are those folks. Like, I believe there's a group of people that are behind some of those accounts, and they've posted the same vile stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, like you said, because it just, their problem goes away. They're mad at her because she didn't take a deal, that she didn't just do 2 years for them to cover up their bullshit. They're scamming.
And again, one side's playing chess and the other's playing checkers, and it's little things, like I go back to, remember Columbo, little things. It was always the little things.
Exactly.
So, if the Alberts, this would be more Brian Albert, I suppose, more than anyone else, if they're going to come in and testify, which they're going to have to at some point, selling your house is not standing alone evidence of a crime or a guilty conscience. But when you start, again, closing little threads all together, this house has been in our family for, generations. This terrible crime happens on our lawn. And then all of a sudden, we're putting our house on the market. But first, we're going to fill the pool. We're going to redo the basement floors, right? We're going to get rid of the dog. And I read somewhere, and again, this is not evidence in the courtroom, so, we'll see if it's true or not, but that he got injured and left work around that time, some kind of hand injury, which is a red flag. All of these little things, I mean, there are just too many of them to dismiss as conspiracy nonsense. There they are. I mean, it doesn't even mean he did anything, but when you're looking at reasonable doubt and all of these things, what is he going to say? Why he redid his basement when he did it like 2 years prior, apparently.
Right.
Nothing beats redoing your basement, then selling the home afterwards.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But if,
And then your first public appearance is with Brian Higgins at Ken Berkowitz's retirement party that Higgins organized with Helena Rafferty. I mean, I think that might come up in the trial too. That could. You never know. I mean, Berkowitz is, I think all of these guys, like, I think they're already, you could see the way the defense is going. They're talking about that office. Higgins and Berkowitz were one. Higgins and Berkowitz are like this. We already know this.
There are so many bad actors involved in this production. You know, even yesterday, I rewatched, because I was curious, the press conference that Moriarty gave, you know, whatever, last summer or whatnot. And I watched it, and, you know, every lawyer knows, every prosecutor and defense attorney, because those are the kinds of cases that end up in the news invariably, knows what lawyers call Rule 3.6, which relates to trial publicity and statements that lawyers on both sides are allowed to make, and what becomes unethical under the theory that you may prejudice, you know, the other party because you say things that a jury could hear, and you know, a potential jury, even months in advance, you could damage the jury pool. And that guy said so many outrageous things, so inappropriate. And then, of course, some of them were just so or so patently false. He was, you know, essentially banging the table saying there's no relationship between Proctor and the Alberts. I mean, is he lying? Is he misled? Is he stupid? You know, he also gave this impassioned speech defending the integrity of all the people in that house and what a disgrace this was, that people were going after, you know, this family. They're nothing but witnesses. They didn't do anything wrong. And we have a strong case against her based on this, that, and the other. I don't know how he hasn't been ethically sanctioned for that. And you know,
he might actually. There's an attorney, Brian Bederow, locally. He's a state attorney, state tax attorney. He's filed ethical complaints with the state ethics department, and he's been following up. And he's getting a lot of pushback about the way they take the records too and stuff. It's just weird, but he's been doing that. But
he's the head of the snake, and you know, as the DA of the county. I said Moriarty. I'm thinking.
Yes, they're having a laugh in the chat, but that's all right. Yeah, everyone knows who you're talking about.
Yeah, no.
We also call him Meatball.
Yeah, well, I try to, you know,
Meatball Morrissey.
I save my lawyer venom for Wendy.
Yeah,
but he's the head of the snake. He's the DA. You know, the buck stops there. If anyone should have been the one to say, "What are we doing? My name's on the bottom line in authorizing what we're doing," he ought to be held accountable for this. I mean,
he called our movement out several months back.
He did.
Yeah, he called us all out. He
called you all out, and then he arrested, you know, someone else.
Boy, and threatened the rest of us. Threatened a bunch of us. Speaking of which, I heard you joined a club this week, Mazza Media.
Oh yes, I heard about that.
You joined the club that I'm in. You got threatened by KP with witness intimidation charges.
Yeah, that's the rumor. I had everyone messaging me on yesterday evening about it. And
congratulations, bro! You made the big time.
Yeah, I was like, geez, I'm like, I finally made it after all this time. It's just unbelievable. So I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
I didn't know informants can press charges. That's interesting.
I wanted to bring up just a transition to Sergeant Good today. And we know that Lieutenant Gallagher said today that there was no probable cause to search the home. But Sergeant Good says, this really threw me off big time. Like I sat there and my mind and reality of this whole thing was twisted for a couple minutes before I regained my center again, was that he had like the perfect way of skewing why Jen walked toward the house. And he basically says they sent Jen to the home to knock on the door. And it took me like a minute or two because I was just so shocked. It was kind of like when Jack Nicholson stifles Tom Cruise during the cross-examination and a few good men, and Tom Cruise is kind of out of sorts. Then he kind of gets it back a minute or two later, and then he starts to get his momentum. That's how I kind of felt. It just threw me. It was like a perfect like excuse. And I said to myself, I go, well, here's the thing about that. This is still an active crime scene. The police are on scene here. If anybody should be knocking on the door, it's the police. Now, I said to myself, what about this counter argument, though? What if we take what he said and what if we take what I just said and we combine the two? So, how about this? If they were going to have her walk to the door or knock on the door, then why is there no police officer escorting her to the door? What's the point in having her go to the door and knock on there for them? That does not make sense.
I
Why
think
didn't he
you're
not?
right.
Yeah. go
And
ahead,
I think, not to be a little critical, but I want to call it as I see it. I don't want to,
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
really be biased, but I think they left on cross a little bit meat on the bone on that. And, it happens, or maybe they have a reason not to,
Mhm.
but, you have him saying that, we did send her in there. Everything you just said, totally on cross would have been perfect. Okay. But, you just told us you want to know what's going on in the house. So like, you don't know. And so don't you think you should have a cop there? All of that. But then something else happens. This is at what, 6 in the morning?
6:30, 4.
Okay. And then what doesn't happen? She doesn't come out with anyone.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Like,
Exactly.
and again, they left that, and then did that pick your interest? Why didn't you then go on? Moreover, McCabe is the one who basically started the real process of whispering later. I understand after the fact. I mean, this is weird. Okay. And, if you don't find this suspicious that she decides I have to call the cops back, but I have to call my friend to say, I just remembered something. Karen told
Yeah.
me that, she hit him.
Mhm.
At that point, if any of these cops are talking to each other, and I know Canton's out of it at that point, but still, to say, well, wait a minute, why is she telling us that now? Why, she went in the house. We don't know what was going on. We know it's their lawn. There's all this kind of weird stuff going on. And it never occurred to say then maybe we should kind of examine what's going on and ask her, when you went in the house at 6:30 or whatever the time was, what were you doing?
Right.
If the idea was to wake people up and nobody got up, what did you do? What did you say? And look, let's be honest, McCabe is going to get just crushed. If she's willing to testify, she is going to get absolutely destroyed every which way till next Wednesday.
Who's in charge? Who's in charge? You gonna have a civilian on a crime scene knock on a door for you? It's a police matter. The police go and knock on the door. And I think they said that they were the ones that tried to reach out to the neighbors at the other houses, if I'm not mistaken. So why
Yep.
not reach out to the house that's right on the property that has a body on the property?
Well, I don't want to ask them for help because they may say no, and therefore, what's the point? That's in essence the testimony
Yeah.
of the supervising cop in charge of the scene, a lieutenant in charge of the crime scene for which he was not qualified to do. And he gave testimony today. Put aside the probable cause. That's an argument. But even if you agree with him or disagree with him, he literally said, I'm not knocking on the door because they might say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine that. What is he
I'm
asking
not
them
gonna
for?
ask.
Hired for that
I'm not going to
alone.
ask. I'm not
Was
going
he
to ask.
asking them for sugar? I don't want to knock on my neighbor's door because they might tell me they don't have any sugar
We,
left in their cup.
Yeah.
we used to have an expression too. I hate to do this, back, what did we do in the Manhattan DA's office? But when you had cops who weren't exactly the most motivated and weren't exactly, doing anything, the expression used to be, detective, go detect something.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
seriously,
Do your job.
put on your big boy pants and not for nothing. There's a dead cop on the lawn. I mean,
Right.
We just wanted to have her knock on the door because it'd be someone that they knew. It was a friendly face. Then you end up finding out that Sergeant Good has actually ties to these people anyways. And even if he had knocked on the door, they would have it would have been more probable than not that they knew exactly who he was. It's crazy. And then he says, okay, I spoke with the homeowner. So let's entertain that. Let's say that she knocked on the door, she went in, then he arrived and he went in. So, okay, that doesn't matter if they did, because if they're only standing in the doorway, what's the difference? It's like Al Powell and Die Hard investigating what's going on at Nakatomi Plaza. And he walks in and he goes, oh, screw this, and turns around. Then he drives away. A body falls on his
right.
vehicle. It's
Yeah.
just, that's about the essence of how much, if he did go in the house, which I am extremely skeptical that he even did. I think he just cooked up a nice little story that sounded plausible, but I'd like to see the video evidence of that. I'd like to see the
Right.
video evidence because the cops were there, the vehicles were on scene. We know Good arrived in his own vehicle, and we know that probably would have been visible on his dash cam footage of him walking towards that house. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
He had no good explanation for, he was very confident that, the job was 34 Fairview. And then of course it turns out
32.
it was 32, and he kind of got tripped up on that. And, maybe it was someone else. But the other thing was this, he said his job that day, he's the patrol supervisor. And I guess in a small town, he's also taking the 911 calls and sending people out. But yet on this day in the blizzard and this and that, even though I have no interest in what's going on, he called the guy in so he could personally respond. Why?
Self-dispatching.
Why?
This is what
Because
they
it's
do.
the Alberts of
This is
Canton.
what we hear all
Yeah.
the time about Canton. Is
Yeah.
that there's two ways to get police service. There's the 911 traditional way, this most
Right.
citizens use, and there's the other way where you call the police officer's cell phone that and they self-dispatch to handle things for you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's I think that is like very indicative. Like it just seems like, wow, he basically did what a lot of people say has been happening. He self-dispatched, and he basically admitted on the stand. And another thing that was weird too today is you got police officers saying in Canton that they recused themselves from the murder investigation because of their conflict. And they argued about what the real reason was, but it was because of the conflict of interest. And then the car gets back to Canton. They put the car not in the custody of the state police and all these other places they could have stopped along the way, or even another town's Lally-Port. They bring it to Canton. They bring the car back to Canton from another town, and then Wanless, a Canton guy, is dismantling the car. So like Canton has recused themselves, and now they're back in on it. Like
it's
Yeah.
so bad in so many ways. Even like, okay, so we're going to recuse ourselves. So we're going to bring in the state police. So here's what we'll do. We'll bring in the guy who works out of our office in Canton. Okay. In other words, he works with these
Yeah,
guys
that
all the
too.
time. And oh, by the way, even though
oh, by the way, he went
happens
to a
to be a
party with the owners of the
personal
house.
friend
Yeah.
with the Alberts who are offering him gifts, and don't worry, all the texts and all
And
that.
he's friends with Berkowitz. He made the
Right.
party for Berkowitz. I mean, this is just,
So this is
there's
how
so many. This is the thing. Like, we could be here all night, like pointing out so
Well,
much shit
but-
that came out the
But-
last
but
couple
here's-
days.
But here's the irony. They were adamant about, well, there was an appearance of a conflict, not an actual. So here's how we're going to fix that. We're going to resolve the appearance of conflict by stepping out of the case and giving it to a corrupt cop in the state police who has an actual conflict of interest. That's the Canton way, apparently.
Yeah, it's crazy. Everyone has a conflict of interest. Everyone that they brought in, Berkowitz, Higgins, Proctor, the other guy, Lank, even Good, who tried not to. Good seemed like he was trying to play it straight, honestly, in a weird way. But
he got
he's got
hurt at
conflicts
the
too.
end.
Yeah.
Maybe he was tired after a long day. It was,
Yeah. They got
But
him.
it's everywhere. Like there's not like I almost think the defense has a hard time because there's so much to pull at. Like I don't know how they keep
I
track
agree
of it
with
all.
you. I know.
There's
I
like
agree with you.
almost too much here.
It's
Like
too
that's
much.
what I worry about the
Yeah.
jury. Like, but you mentioned something, Mark. You've talked about this before. Will the trial will there be a verdict? Will the judge throw it out? I mean, this seems like it's about to blow up.
I mean,
in their
does it even
faces.
make it to Friday?
Yeah. Does it make it till Friday? Does this trial continue even?
Well, yes, for now. I don't think it's a situation where the judge will throw it out. Ultimately, and I'm not dismissing this possibility, I'm not sure the DA is going to make it to the finish line. Now, do I think, if you remember a couple of weeks ago when we talked about this word I used to use about zombie prosecutors in the context of Wendy Murphy, just has like no shame, and you can tell her humiliate her and she's just going to come back like she did again today. Lally is also a zombie in a different way. I'm not suggesting he's a bad human being. I'm not suggesting he would call you or write you all these terrible things. but he obviously is impervious to like humiliation because he does it to himself on a daily basis. I mean, he looks like that meme of the guy who's doing karate and like punching himself in the nuts. I mean, that's what he's doing every day in the courtroom. Pardon my language for those who are, offended by that stuff. But eventually, if a lot of their witnesses, the civilians in particular, and Proctor decide, I'm not doing this, again, out of their own self-preservation, because their lawyers are telling them, the feds are watching. Some of them have already made statements to the feds, which, by the way, one thing we don't even think about is there is no way in hell that any one of these witnesses who spoke to the feds, there's no chance in hell that they're going to say anything in this state court trial that deviates from that. And unlike these people who don't know how to take notes in Canton, FBI agents prepare these reports called 302s. They're called FBI 302s. And they take reports, and they're long and they're detailed, and they do write down everything. And so it's a really fascinating thing here, which is, why are some of the people who may have spoken to the feds on the DA's witness list, unless they're suggesting and giving a tell that what they told the FBI was, nothing. I don't know. But the more you watch this and they see that, McLaughlin already got served up. Other ones of that can't speak tonight. Other ones of these witnesses are probably going to get damaged severely. You start to wonder if the Proctors of the world and the McCabe's, and they all have lawyers. Okay. And I mean, I've represented witnesses and things, and those can be very unpleasant conversations. And you have to remember that if their lawyers are being fair, which let's assume they are, their duty of loyalty is to their client, not the people or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Karen Reed. And so it may very well be that some of these people decide that it's no longer in their interest to testify in a way that the DA would prefer. And if that starts to happen, then you can see the case blowing up, because at this point, they need a miracle because, their I hit him evidence is pretty unimpressive. Their forensic evidence is already destroyed before they've even offered it. I mean, that's just horrible. Usually you have to
they couldn't protect the evidence. They have no chain of custody.
Usually you impeach evidence after it's presented, but they've already laid the foundation to call that into question. So if they don't have that, what's left? I mean, is there video of her hitting him? No. Are there any witnesses who saw it? No. Are there any DA accident reconstruction witnesses who are going to say that this is totally consistent? No. Are there defense ones who say it's not going to happen that way? Yes. And then you save this little nugget. Here comes the medical examiner who says, let me tell you something. There are these things called, manner of death and cause of death. Okay. And manner of death is, homicide, suicide, accident. And homicide is not even an ugly word. Homicide just means person A, caused the death of person B. It can be justifiable. It's not even a crime. And they don't even have a manner of death, except, it couldn't have been a homicide by getting beat up, because they noted that.
That's it. That's all they noted.
The medical examiner is going to be destroyed. And, that's not the kind of thing that usually happens. I mean, a skilled lawyer can often challenge their findings, but they do it in a way where medically, maybe this doesn't fit, or did you consider this?
Yes.
Not like, who are you talking to in the state police? Who at Canton? What is this little nugget you threw in? Not a fight. What's going on here? And I almost feel bad for the medical examiner, because that is such a ridiculous thing to put. That's an editorial comment that doesn't
need to be there.
Well,
do you think that was likely suggested by the police to put it there? Obviously, right? I mean, that's what it seems like to me.
It has to be, because how could you determine? Well, let's back up. If you exclude a fight in the way that she says, I can't really tell you how this happened, because, maybe it was an accident. Who knows? But it wasn't a fight. I mean, logically, how do you get there? I don't know how to even classify this, but it just occurred to me, it can't be homicide resulting from a fight, essentially. That makes no sense. Somebody clearly asked, and the evidence will come out. What a lot of times you'll see are police officers, and in certain places, prosecutors too. They go to the autopsy, and it'll be very interesting to see who was there,
who went
was
there.
talking, and
Was it Berkowitz?
had-
I'm gonna say Berkowitz or
could have been
Lang.
Lally. It could have been
Yeah,
Lally.
Lally. Yeah,
It's not uncommon in certain
that's right.
places for prosecutors
Yeah.
to go. But the point is, somebody had to have asked that question, and then she had to say no. And then the question becomes, looking at the blow on the back of his head, the swollen eyes, the hands that are bloody, the nose. How do you know without more that that's not consistent with possibly being a fight? Because the answer is, it doesn't mean she has to conclude that that's the cause, but if that's at least consistent as a possibility, in other words, those injuries could not possibly be from this, which is what she's in essence saying, how is she going to hold up on cross-examination? And you can be sure these guys have a medical expert who's training them, because these guys aren't doctors. They're going to talk to someone. How is this ME going to give credible testimony and justify medically that I couldn't say this about, the manner of death, but I'm telling you, there's no way it's a fight.
It sounds like Mass State Police Annie Dukin. I mean, it sounds the same thing.
And by the way, whether that gets brought out or not, which it's probably inappropriate. I mean, in all fairness, but do you really believe that there isn't going to be at least one of 12 jurors mumbling under their breath? That, I mean, look, everybody knows about that. I mean, she cost hundreds and hundreds of drug convictions to go, and it's the same agency. It's terrible.
Yeah, the games, like, it's kind of funny. Like I feel like back in the 50s, people weren't aware of these kind of scandals now, but now we know these games that law enforcement are playing. We do. A lot of people know, and I think that's why this is blown up. Like, it's just like you can't cover up anymore. It's so much harder, especially if there's a spotlight on you, which this has a spotlight.
Exactly. This was a small scale cover up that was intended to be a small scale story.
Yeah.
And they thought that they could just kind of suppress this and submerge it and say, okay, here it is. It's foolproof. And then this story just took on a whole life of its own over the past year. And it's just reached an absolute, it's unbelievable.
I am fascinated. And I don't know who the lawyers are, but I assume all these, affected parties that we've been talking about, they all have real lawyers, but I'd be curious to know why they think it, and Proctor, number one, and then even some of the other ones, why it would be in their interest. I mean, if you're a lawyer for Proctor, this is what you're telling him. I mean, if I were representing him, you're done. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start from there. Your career
is over.
Knowing what we know about him and what will come out. But there's also the peril, we know that he had a little trouble with a federal grand jury over telling the truth. Apparently, in his text messages that he, in essence, has admitted violating her rights, which could even be a crime by what he did. Certainly, it would subject the state police to a lengthy lawsuit. And then and again, I don't know what he did or didn't do in this case, but if he did something like we talked about earlier with Odd Job and the golf ball rolling down your pants, or other stuff similar to that, do you really know that other people don't know or will find out? And as somebody just put, in the comments, if he gets busted for that and he perjures himself in this trial, when he goes to prison, the number starts, it's a double-digit number for this, because it would be so terrible. And my point is, if I'm advising him, there's nothing to salvage here. Like, you're done. Your reputation is lost. Your career as a police officer is over. No real DA, other than perhaps Norfolk, will ever call you as a witness ever again. So if that's what you're trying to do, to kind of like muscle through the trial to try to do some self-preservation and fall on the sword and say, oh, I shouldn't have looked for nudes. That's not going to do it, buddy.
Yeah.
That's the least of his problems.
Yeah.
I mean, that may be the most offensive to people, the idea that he's doing that, but that's the least of his problems. And the feds are, watching all of this. My advice to him would be, you're going to have to take the publicity hit, and it's going to be ugly.
Plead
And,
the fifth.
everything that goes with it, but that's right. And
Yeah.
I would be telling him to do that based on
What you
what
know.
we know, unless there's something dramatic. And, I know his lawyer has made statements. He's not a target of the feds. I don't assume the lawyer is being inaccurate. I mean, lawyers generally, when you don't live in Wendy world, tell the truth generally and value their credibility and reputations about things like this. But just because somebody has been told they're not a target today over, fakakta testimony of lying about you got a gift from the Alberts and then you corrected it or whatever it was, that's not something that like is a pinky promise from the U.S. attorney forever. If you then go perjure yourself in a state murder case about other things, yeah, they're gonna go after you. So
what about the other two? Because I've been hearing that Proctor may not testify for the prosecution, that they're probably with where this comment's going, that it's going to be Buchanan and Tully, which other supervisors. Buchanan is now the co-investigator of the case. You notice they changed that, like they brought him in a lot more.
Well,
do you think they have any risk if they go? I mean, I would be afraid if I were them to testify.
But follow through the Proctor problem first. So, okay, the DA says, we won't call you as a witness, maybe for two reasons. One, because we can't, it's embarrassing. Or two, because, they find him to be this odious, lying pig who, did something wrong. But that's not going to solve his problems, because the defense has a right to stick a subpoena in his chest. They will, and they're going to haul him up there. And if it's going to be taken the fifth, then, whatever, take the fifth or not. But so his problem is not solved. And if the DA doesn't call him and the defense does, and he's exposed as the, just yucky witness for a lot of reasons that he is, then Proctor still has his problems. And of course, the defense is going to go to town saying they couldn't even call, after all this other stuff we told you about. The best evidence perhaps to support our argument is they couldn't even call the main guy who interviewed all the witnesses, and more importantly, found the taillight stuff and was with the car. And then you remember, ladies and gentlemen, that lieutenant testimony about the Stop and Shop bag with the Solo cups. Who do you think had access to that during that missing 2 hours? Where's the library video? So at that point, again, I just shake my head at the DA. If they think the situation calls for, well, we just won't call him, it doesn't. If they've made a determination that he and perhaps some of these others can't testify, then they ought to take a deep breath, look in the mirror, remember that, the vow they took to be an ethical attorney and particular prosecutor. That's like, I mean, you have people's lives in your hands. They ought to suck it up, go into court and say, we're done here. It's not right.
Yeah.
And at this point, have they reached that point? No. Do they have the courage to do this? No. It's going to take getting, smacked around more by the defense lawyers in the courtroom before they reach that point. But if the witnesses give them no other choice, which is what I'm getting at, then at some point, I just don't see how they can survive. And yeah, I would think Proctor's partner has some of the similar problems because, if he was with him during a lot of these tasks, what do you think he's going to say? The same damn thing about finding the taillight or interviewing these witnesses or all this other stuff. So the only difference is, he didn't send text messages talking about looking at nudes and making illegal searches and bragging to my high school buddies that, my cop friend isn't going to, get in any trouble.
Now, if the defense doesn't bring up Proctor and the prosecution, I said that backwards. The prosecution doesn't bring up Proctor, but the defense does. Bev can't block that, right? Because this comment is asking about it. They're saying it.
No,
Which will tell the
what'll
jury if
happen,
witnesses are impeached.
what'll happen, I mean, you want to talk about pathetic. The way this will happen is what they need to do is properly subpoena Proctor. Proctor's lawyer will make it clear to the parties that he's not testifying. He's taking the fifth. And the defense will say, that's great. You have a subpoena. See you in court. And they will call him as a witness. And this loser will have to sheepishly get up there, and he's going to have to take the fifth question by question. It's not like a defendant who has an absolute right to just, and you can't draw any inference. So, if they ask him his name, are you Michael Proctor? He can't take the fifth. I mean, that's
Right.
not incriminating. But then you're going to start asking about the case, and his lawyer is going to be, prepared him to start taking the fifth. And if he has to do it question by question, there may come a point where, however snarky the lawyer wants to be, at one point say, rather than do this for the next 2 hours, is it fair to say that if I ask you anything about your investigative conduct in the case, you're going to read your prepared speech about, you refuse to answer questions on the advice of counsel, on the grounds that any answer I say may tend to incriminate myself. And he's going to say, yeah. And jury will be allowed to draw a negative inference and hold that against them. And when the jury is instructed on credibility, they'll be told a number of things, witness demeanor, forthrightness, bias. And of course, being forthright would cover, the lead investigator taking the fifth. So if he does that, I mean, I don't even know why they would bother proceeding. More so than even, McCabe's and Albert's, because again, Proctor is the glue guy, right? He connects
He's at everything.
forensic evidence to the statements that she made to give them,
the car, everything, the statements. He's coached people. He's in everything. So, and he's at the key. Yeah, I mean, he's the first one. This is a good question. Curious, have you ever seen, Mark, where a trial where multiple witnesses for the state impeach themselves?
Oh, all the time. Again, I'm trying to avoid war stories, but the FBI case that we've talked about in the past, it was, a shit show. Yeah, all the time. And you're in the process, I think, of seeing it here, and you haven't even seen the so-called powerful witnesses yet, other than arguably Katie, who kind of was the conduit for their theory, I suppose.
Tomorrow should be interesting. Do you know what time it starts, Mazza, tomorrow? Is it 9 or 10?
9 a.m. I think it's going to be 9 to 1. It's going to be a half day from what I understand tomorrow.
Okay. 9 a.m., 9 to 1. And I just wonder who's going to be called.
Hey, it's been interesting. Most of these witnesses have been interesting. I thought today every witness had my attention, in terms of just from Lank to Gallagher to Good. I thought actually Good was probably the most substance was in his testimony. I thought in terms of just like, juice and, things that you questioned, things that you called into question for sure. And I thought Jackson kind of knocked them dead to rights when he said, it was effectively undocumented when he claimed that he went into 34 Fairview Road and asked how everything was going in the house. I think Yannetti asked him, he goes, did you ever see the basement at all? Did you ever see that?
Nope.
Oh, well, they look like people had just woken up at 6 o'clock. Well, that doesn't mean that they didn't go to bed an hour or two earlier when the incident with John O'Keefe had already been wrapped up hours before. So that kind of is easy to refute. And then I asked the big question to Sergeant Good. If I was a cross-examiner, defense attorney, I would say, why did no other cops have any recollection of what you said about going in the house? Officer Saraf and Mulaney never said that anybody went in the house, right? They just said that they had seen Karen and, that's it. They said she was frantic or whatever. They heard varying things, but no other cop has backed this up that at some point they went in the house. And I'm not sure if the defense had actually asked that, but at the same time, that's the only time we've heard that story. We didn't hear it from anybody else. No other person that's been cross-examined has said that Sergeant Good went in that house and stood in that doorway or in that interior of the house there, and Nettie was asking, did you see a door to the left that would have led you down to the basement? Oh, I don't recall.
Yeah.
So I thought Gallagher was far and away the biggest thing today, for the simple reason that to the extent that the DA thought they had any chance after a really rocky first week, I think Gallagher kneecapped it because it's not even so much a personal thing about him, but the evidence came out through him and he's responsible for a lot of it. But in addition to the comic, I mean, nothing's funny about this.
Yes,
Obviously.
if Adam Lally says it, I mean, that was hilarious.
Yeah, but
I want to know who was laughing, like in the
Everyone.
audience. Everybody.
I mean, how do you not laugh? I mean, you have to get some humor out of a stressful thing. But I mean, the point is, you listen to about an hour to an hour and a half of just jaw dropping. I mean, from a lawyers, a real police officers, including crime scene guys, private investigators who watch this stuff. I guarantee you, all across the country, there were jaws on the floor about, hearing about leaf blowers, scooping snow with solo cups that are unsanitary and Stop and Shop bags. So you're laughing and you're saying the crime scene evidence is already, you're going to roll your eyes. You don't, but then it comes almost at the end of it and you say, oh my God, they left this man's blood, which stated another way means DNA, sitting in the room, the Sally Port, where the truck is, unattended, shortly after they made the light look worse than it actually was, which is also terrible, but left it in a place where Proctor, who is the centerpiece of the whole defense cover-up theory, I mean, he's the vessel for the frame-up, if you will, where he could have had access, and they did it perfectly. They've already just laid it out there that when you hear that there's forensic evidence in the car, all they have to do is this guy was unaccounted for. He lied at the time of a search warrant. And then he claims he did this, he claims he did that, but he was alone with, O'Keefe's DNA. And I think that all of their so-called car evidence is just completely kneecapped today, which leaves them with what?
Yeah, exactly. And Berkowitz, Tim Albert, Higgins, they all had access. Proctor, the whole list of them. It could have been anybody. It could have. Who knows?
And the worst part for the DA is because, again, you have to lead jurors how to get, to the goal line that you want to take them. And I mean, if obviously jurors can't talk right now and nobody should be talking to them, but in an imaginary world, if somebody were to say to a juror, look what you've heard so far, can you tell me, I'm not asking you to make a decision. Can you tell me what the DA's theory is and what the evidence right now is to support it? And I'm here to tell you that 12 out of 12 people would say, I don't know what the hell is going on here.
After how many days now? How many days has it been? 4 or 5 days now?
Yeah, 6 maybe. I don't know.
Today was day 5.
They have it's so.
There's no theory. What's been presented is the defense theory. I mean, we have much more of an idea of where the defense is going with their defense. And you see more you can tell even things that we don't know yet. You're like, oh, why are they asking that? You can see they're going certain directions.
Well, they're effective communicators also because the jury understands big concepts. Like, for example, I keep harping on the O'Keefe blood just sitting there for anyone to play with. Look, that's over their heads right now because they don't fully know, but they understand the big takeaway in a macro sense from Gallagher, which is, oh my God, the Keystone cops are running the investigation. These guys are the most unqualified morons. And every juror in their mind is thinking leaf blower, solo cup, Stop and Shop bag. Oh my God. And he even testified, one of them, I lived like a mile away, or the precinct was there. I could have gotten proper materials. We have them, but what the hell, we'll scoop the snow. And so they understand that kind of stuff. Or, they understand now that a lot of paperwork and a lot of little things all seem to be skewing towards protecting the Alberts based on the way they documented things. So, and that's all they have right now. They have.
I think in Canton, it's also protect all cops there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having this police audit discussion. One of the people brought it up. There's been the only
clips.
The
you
only
not say one bad thing about the Canton cops.
Yeah. The only Canton complaint against a police officer was a Boston cop. That's why they got a complaint against the Canton Cop, because he got a complaint when he was in Boston or something like that. Like they cover them all up. Like every other city in town has like 30, 40, 50 complaints. And then we watch the Canton Select Board, hearing after hearing, people complaining about the police in Canton. Like, but they have no official complaints. Like, this is a cover-up crew. This is what they do over and over.
Oh, yeah.
Just like it's so funny when they brought up Timmy Albert's, you arrested Tim Albert. Do you think they're going to bring Michael Lank up tomorrow? Well, after what we saw on the Void,
I wouldn't be shocked. I'm actually expecting it. I don't know what Mark thinks, but I'm expecting.
You think they're going to bring him up first? Is that what the prosecution? They're just going to start with another terrible witness?
But they're zombie prosecutors. They just go forward. That's, they have a playbook. And, thing about trials are too, they're like shifting and moving all the time. And you have to kind of go with the flow. And a lot of it is feel. And I think what happens too, frankly, when you have kind of bureaucrats and hacks who maybe don't have much personality or don't do much original thinking, they're slower to adjust. They have a playbook and they just go with it. And so in the beginning of the trial, they say, here's what we're going to do. And they stop thinking. They follow the outline and just go forward. And they can't read through what they're doing. I mean, like, for example, if I were them, I would be having serious thoughts. Why am I calling Brian Albert if I'm the DA? I mean, seriously, to do what? I mean, your theory is he had nothing to do with anything and doesn't know what happened. Why are you calling him? This guy today, even though he's going to probably get cross-examined with terrible, terrible stuff about, getting involved in, bar fights and craziness with, the Alberts as they take on the Lapalato brothers. I mean, again, how do you not just laugh at this? It was those Rosado brothers. I mean, this is crazy. They sound like a bunch of Neanderthals. I'm sorry. And
the Alberts versus Mike Tyson from 1986.
We had to protect D&E Pizza from the Lapalato.
The Lapalato brothers.
Gang.
Seriously. And
when the Alberts a couple centuries back defended D&E Pizza against the British.
Seriously.
So, we protect our own. This is our town.
I think they're going to keep going until it's going to be up to the witnesses, the important ones who may have legal problems. Short of them telling them we're not doing this, they'll just keep going. But I'm not dismissing that possibility at this point. I mean, their lawyers have got to be paying attention. And look, they know things we don't know. So in all fairness to them, maybe Proctor's lawyer is 1,000% certain and satisfied based on a whole number of things that we don't know, that there's no chance that he planted evidence, things like that. I don't know. So he just figures we got to go forward. I don't know, but it just seems, to what end? They're all going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
They're not going to be compelling witnesses. Clearly, it doesn't sound like they're going to be coming off well. And I don't know how they're going to advance the DA case. I mean, the DA seems screwed in so many ways, because if they call all of these people, it's like they're calling the Alberts to prove a negative. I mean, think about it. They're calling them to say, I didn't do this crime.
Yeah. And the more they say it, the more the guilty.
The worse they look. But
because
I mean,
they play the part anyways. I mean, they look, all these people.
I did not have sexual relations.
I keep going back
woman.
to Lank today. He looked.
Yeah.
He reminded the look like.
Oh yeah.
Kind of reminded me of Furman. Like, I don't know why, just the way he looked.
Yep.
And the way he acted, it just kind of.
Yep. Yeah. They all looked nervous, or like good. He was chilled out early, then he kind of eventually started to crack. Gallagher seemed okay, but then he really started to get into it with Jackson with his responses.
Angry.
Yeah, he did.
Angry.
Yeah. And it almost seemed to come out of nowhere. It was like Alan Jackson wasn't really presenting any questions differently than he had, and all of a sudden he was getting real snarky and snappy.
No, and then he made that funny but stupid comment, which you kind of laugh. But I mean, it really sums up the whole problem with this case and the whole culture of Canton. I mean, I don't doubt a thing that the DA tells me. If they tell me, something happened, then yes, sir. Off we go.
Yep.
That was
no
cringy.
questions. We follow the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then blue line.
Yep.
Cover for your brothers.
Yep.
Brotherhood.
Really bad.
It's so funny. I noticed that at Berkowitz's. I keep going back to him tonight. His retirement party. They just kept talking about the brotherhood. The brotherhood. Such a brother. You know who does that a lot is the former Boston police chief. What's his name? He wears the hat. You know who
The
I'm
guy,
talking about?
the police
The big
chief
guy.
from the guy that was the police chief during the Boston Marathon.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
What's his name? Willie? No, not Willie. Oh man, I can't believe I can't remember his name. But he was there. He kept
I know
talking
who
about
you're
the
talking
brotherhood. The brotherhood.
The Brotherhood.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, look, I know a lot of cops, and we all, good cops are good cops, and it is, a brotherhood. But the
Ed
brotherhood,
Davis. That's what it was. Ed
No, it
Davis.
wasn't Eddie Davis. That was the
Oh,
one for the Boston Marathon. But
that's what I
no,
was thinking. They were thinking. Okay.
it's one of the newer ones. Willie Gross. That's who it is. Willie
Okay.
Gross. Willie.
but the brotherhood obviously should, not extend past conspiring to commit crimes or cover up crimes. If that's what's happening, that's terrible. You don't
Yeah.
get a pass because you're a cop if you're doing something like that. That's an interesting question. Somebody wrote about the murder versus something lighter.
Well, I mean, I think they started out with a lighter charge and then they upcharge her because she wouldn't take a plea. I mean, that's
By all accounts, punish the defendant for going to trial. And, then, I mean, look, I don't know what they're thinking or not, but it doesn't matter what the charges are here. They could have 20 or they could have 1. The bottom line is her position is, I didn't do it. Like, none of it. There was no car accident. I did not run him over. I had absolutely nothing to do with this. So her position is a very strong one, which is, I'm not guilty of, you could throw every crime in the book at me, but I didn't do it. Now, the risk of that, if you believe in this kind of stuff, but I don't think there's a hell of a lot of evidence to support it, is if the DA were to prove a car accident, that she hit O'Keefe, which I'm not suggesting they will. I don't think there's much chance of that. But if they do, then the entire defense is crumbled. It's gone. Like, they went all in on their defense. There's no wiggle room here. I mean, if she was framed and whatnot, it means she didn't do it. And if a prosecutor had real evidence to establish that she did it, in a summation, they would go to town on the defense, explain why it's been destroyed, leaving one, unfortunate conclusion. But of course, when you think like that, it helps to have one thing, evidence, which they don't seem to have much.
awesome. You got anything on Mazza Media?
No, I'm pretty much good. I thought today was effective for the defense overall. I thought they really kind of continued to pick apart at the overall, basically end game that they're trying to accomplish here, which is reasonable doubt. I think they're continuing to do that, and I think they're piecing it together one cross-examination at a time. And let's keep in mind that David Unetti did get Sergeant Good to agree to faulty protocols regarding the crime scene investigation, which I thought is very huge in the face of the jury. And the jury is going to think of things like this, that, well, this crime scene investigation was really faulty. They were using solo cups and Stop and Shop bags, and there's all these questions about things that they did and allowing someone to walk in the house. It adds too many questions. And actually, I have one question for Mark. I wanted to know, Mark, about you. When you started following this story, how long was it, in hours or days, before you really started to basically have almost no doubt that Karen Reed was innocent?
Well, I first heard about it when it happened, as I told you. If there's news in the Boston area, I have some degree of interest in it. And something like this, certainly being, within my bailiwick of what I do, was going to have natural interest. So I would say that I followed this casually, in terms of, other than seeing these funny Turtle Boys stories and whatever. I had a general idea, but I honestly could not tell you what an Albert or a McCabe or what, all of that took some time. But even early, and, I wasn't that involved in this socially. I was a little bit every now and then, but most of the stuff that I was, persnickety about in the beginning of this was about the DA, the public statements, the discovery issues that were being made, and those are major red flags, by the way, because when a DA starts giving press conferences in the manner that he did, they're not disclosing evidence, they're not looking into this. I mean, right away, something smelled bad. And then the next level from that was just reading some of the filings, not the blog stuff, which is fine, but, actual court documents and whatnot. It became clear to me that there's going to be reasonable doubt. But at this point, it seems to me that I think she's actually innocent.
Excellent. And I think that's what the jury is going to end up coming across to very soon. As soon as, they hear all this stuff and they continuously hear this stuff day after day and week after week here, they're going to basically say there's more than enough reasonable doubt here.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you want to be all lawyerly about it and unemotional without all the background stuff, if you accept the premise that the jury is intelligent, that they were selected properly, that they're going to follow the rules, they're going to listen to the evidence, and they're going to follow the judge's legal instructions on what proof beyond a reasonable doubt is, there is no way they're going to get 12 jurors to convict her. In the best case scenario, they may get a couple to hang the jury. Now, if the jury were to hang, I don't think that's going to happen either. But if the jury were to hang, say, 10-2 for acquittal, okay, now that's a win for her, by the way. It's not a complete win, but that is absolutely a win. And then the DA says we're going to retry the case. The amount of protesting and public outrage, which, by the way, is going to involve politicians, because people who represent that area are going to say enough
of this.
Enough.
Yeah.
And they'll never retry her. I mean, unless by some miracle, they get an 11-1 for guilty, and there's something that we're all missing. That would never happen. But when you look at this and say there are going to be 12 jurors who are going to take the Massachusetts instruction, which is beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. I mean, if you're not a prosecutor and you hear that that's the jury charge, you just want to throw up. We used to laugh when I was a prosecutor, whenever a judge would read the reasonable doubt charge, which does not include that awful language, or depending on your perspective, beyond a moral certainty, we would laugh and stare at each other and say, how the hell does anyone ever get convicted of anything when a judge basically gives the jury every out? Then you look at a case like this, where she's a really sympathetic defendant. The prosecution witnesses look terrible, incompetent, corrupt, or worse, who knows? And, there's going to be more of that coming, and they have no evidence. And a judge basically says you have to find her not guilty unless you find, beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. That is impossible on already. How are you going to do that? How are you going to dismiss all of the evidence that the defense has already put out there, that they're going to put out there, all the credibility problems that the prosecution witnesses have, all the inconsistencies, the lack of direct evidence, the lack of actual evidence? I saw her do this. The just awful coincidences with the, McCabe's and Alberts and cops. There isn't a sane juror alive who is going to find her guilty. And, whatever the, Twitter yahoos are screaming about, whatever, they're advocating a position. They don't know what they're talking about. It's fine. Everyone has a right to an opinion, but it doesn't mean it's a correct one. Ultimately, juries do what they do. We don't know what a jury does, but it would be a sad state of our legal system if jurors in this case would just want to, do her for what? Because Lally says she's guilty with no evidence. That's not going to happen.
Right. This is another question that came in. Do jurors ever say I'm the odd one out and just join the other side?
You hope not. And, that's why in jury selection, where, you're thinking about a lot of things, you're always depending on what position you have, one of the most fascinating things when you're picking a jury is, is this person assertive, aggressive, or passive? Or have they been on a jury before? And, if they have, you always ask, did it reach a verdict? And you're not allowed to ask what that verdict was. But, if you have a strong case, you want jurors who you think are willing to make decisions. And that can also be by somebody's occupation. You get some, lawyers generally are not commonly picked, but, they may be more willing to follow the law if it's an emotional case and this and that. But the problem with the DA is like up is down and down is up here. I mean, the defense is the sympathetic party here by a mile. The DA, I feel terrible for Mr. O'Keefe and his family, which gets lost in all of this because they're entitled to all the sympathy in the world. But, they're not going to get closure or justice if we just throw his girlfriend in prison for 20 years because we can't, this is how it works in Canton. It's like Copland, right?
It is.
Oh, it
Just
is.
like
Yeah.
Copland.
It is. Yeah.
It can. It's definitely Copland. It's always
Yeah.
been like that, actually. Yeah.
Which started off with a big cover up right off the bat on the bridge.
Right out of the bat.
Yep.
Not one of Stallone's better movies, but nevertheless.
I like that.
Underrated.
I thought that was a
Underrated.
pretty good
That was
movie.
underrated.
Yeah.
It's not like top 5, but
Yeah.
He's got a lot of great Rocky and Rambo movies ahead of that. So
Rocky 1 was great. That was
Demolition
like
Man, Cliffhanger. Yeah.
Well, the best thing about Rocky is he lost. Like that.
Exactly.
That never happens in the hero movie. He goes all the way.
Right.
But it doesn't even matter. He went all the way.
all the way.
Yeah. Against the
Going
that
the
was a
distance.
great. Yep.
Yeah.
No one thought he had a chance.
Yeah, awesome movie. When he knocks down Apollo Creed early in the fight, that was awesome. He just hits him with that uppercut. Down he goes.
And they both end up in the hospital, Rocky 2, right?
Right. Yeah, at the beginning. Yeah, exactly.
That was great. That was a good little series there. I think
amazing.
I don't know which one. Rocky 2 wasn't bad.
Rocky 2 was awesome. Honestly, I liked every single one, including
liked
the
all
Creed
of them.
movies, except for Rocky 5. That
I
was
liked
the one
them
where I
all
had to
too,
complain.
but I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of Rocky 3 and 4 are a little
I
bit.
liked Rocky 3 because when I was a kid,
Yeah.
Mr. T and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, that's right. That's how I felt
Yeah.
too. That's my favorite
Thunder
one.
Lips.
Because, yeah.
Thunderlips and Clubber Lang, right?
Clubber Lang, yeah.
Well, just the way Rocky takes on Mr.
Fool.
T in that final round and just goes off on him with that array of punches, punching combinations, and just goes totally off, just knocking him out at the end was just amazing to watch. That's why it's my favorite one as well, because you get all the personalities in it, like Mr. T and Hulk Hogan, and he teams up with Apollo and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I always liked the music too in the Rocky movies.
yeah.
That's-
Oh, for
I
sure.
was a wrestler, so we'd always play that,
Yeah.
in the training room. Rocky soundtracks. Rocky
Yeah.
4 soundtrack was a good one.
For sure. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wait, is that the Ivan Drago one with like
Yep.
the 80s training ballads? And
Yeah, you had
Exactly.
that one. Oh yeah. A Burning Heart.
That's
Yeah.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Right.
No Easy Way Out.
No
Yeah.
Easy Way Out. Yeah.
Living in America.
Yeah. Oh my God, James Brown. That's right. You know them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
So
Classic
we're
movie.
way off track now, but that's
That's
fun.
all right.
We're having fun. Eye of the Tiger. Someone said that's a
Eye of the
great
Tiger.
song.
Yeah, the classic.
It's up there with the Vision Quest soundtrack.
Oh. Only the young, right?
Yes. Hungry for Heaven. Dio, Hungry for Heaven.
God.
Oh man, we're way off track, but we had fun tonight. I mean,
We did.
we had a few laughs. Mazza Media got us cracking up at
Oh,
one
I did.
point.
Yep. Got to get the humor rolling here to all this.
I
tension,
thought they
you know.
black bagged you. I thought like KP showed up or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I had a wave of anti Karen Reed people outside the home, and
Someone delivered a pizza.
yeah, exactly. They threw eggs at me like they did down at that whatever that thing they did back in Canton, the rolling rally. Yeah.
Oh, the rolling rally.
Gee,
Fun
yeah.
time throwing
Oh,
eggs.
geez. How classless is it to throw an egg at a child like
Oh.
they did at that rolling rally last summer? Unbelievable.
Jesus.
Yep.
Hmm.
Crazy. I'll be happy when this is all over for Karen, but it's just going to be, like I see Karen getting a little bit, occasionally mentally exhausted, burnout, frustrated, a little bit emotional, but that's all, when you're sitting in a seat like that and it's all about you for and against, it's very difficult to have to watch people give an account of your life.
I'll tell you, it's probably even worse. I mean, I'm not there and I've never seen this courtroom in person, but the shoebox
It's small.
that
Yeah.
they're in and having
Yeah.
all of these people from these families. I mean, it's just so tense, like hovering on top of you. I mean, that's not most courtrooms are not set up that way. And
There were courtrooms that were bigger in the Three Stooges in 1930 than there were in this one, to be honest with you. But that goes to tell you how old that courthouse probably is. I mean, that probably thing goes back to who knows how long.
I mean, they've just got these family members on top of her, on top of each other. It's, and then, you get the view and, you see what's his face in the back there typing away and doing
The
his
Grant guy, Grant. Oh my God. Yeah. Typing away.
I mean, what
Crazy hair.
it's the whole, this is like a giant cartoon. I mean,
It
you'd
is.
laugh if it wasn't so sad.
Someone said, "Who is KP?" You don't want to know. Part of the circus.
Not Kristaps Porzingis, that I'll tell you. Right?
Yeah, no.
Who's out tomorrow, by the way, but you knew that already.
Yeah, if you don't know KP, you don't want to know. You don't, trust me. Grant is funnier. At least you can laugh at Grant a little more.
Ugh. He gave a summary today about how devastating a day it was for the defense.
Yeah, what did you think about him and Wendy today? Their little commentary.
I mean,
How much do you love Wendy, though, Mark? Come on, tell us.
I in 25 years find her the most vile attorney. And of course, I don't even know her, but she's just a disgusting human being. The son, I mean, he's a gadfly, and I don't know if he's off. I don't know if that's the right term, but I mean, even his analysis, I don't know if he's just trying to clown people or does he really think?
No, he really believes this shit.
Well, then, I mean, I do find it comical.
Well, I'm waiting for the Officer Doofy ending at the end of Scary Movie where it turns out the whole thing's been a ruse and he was just messing with everybody for his own personal amusement the whole
I
time.
will tell you this,
I wish. I really do.
I think it's unfortunate that in a tiny courtroom like this, where there's such limited media access, that a gadfly clown like that has a press pass. I think it's sad because it obviously ought to be reported honestly, fairly, and if you're gonna sit there as a journalist, you could at least pretend to be fair in terms of what you're seeing and what you're doing. But so I don't know. I mean, something's off with him. But I mean, Wendy, man, she said, what did she say today? They proved reasonable doubt many times over. So she's like 600% guilty already before they've offered any evidence other than I hit him, which has been discredited. But that's why, she's the queen of Wendy World. She's living the dream.
Wendy
right?
World. I love that one. We got to trademark that, Wendy World.
Yeah.
You can it'll be another sticker to add to Grant's laptop.
Wendy World.
How is he getting? Someone made a point about the stickers on his laptop. If you can't have any free Karen Reed stuff or Justice for John O'Keefe stuff, how are you allowed to have a laptop with that many? That was something that was brought up.
Well, it's all pot stuff, isn't it?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, mostly, yeah. A couple
I mean,
things
is
like
he?
that.
He's not advocating stuff in the case, is he?
No,
that would be a serious problem. That would be
Okay.
He's got like a
outrageous.
UFCW sticker on there, Marine sticker, and then a bunch of pot ones mostly.
Yeah.
He supports the Marines.
Mostly cannabis.
Yeah, with the Marines.
Wouldn't expect that.
I know.
Must have a family member or something in there.
I
a
think
close
it was
friend
a
or
friend
something.
of ours that died. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't know why he's in the courtroom. I don't know why Wendy talks. She ought to just, as I said a couple of weeks ago, kind of skulk back under the rock from whence she came. But, there really should be more of the mainstream people being a little more courageous. Again, they shouldn't be advocates, but the way I see it, a lot of the mainstream, TV network type people, they're very cautious. I mean, really cautious. And I understand they don't want to seem unfair, and that's important. But sometimes when big things happen, you ought to tell the public with all that it is. Like, I'll give you an example. When the supervising lieutenant on the scene says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to leaf blow it. And we're going to go get solo cups and get on our hands and knees. and we're going to scoop the evidence. And then to cap it all off, before we put it in the Stop and Shop bag, I'm going to take out my iPhone and take pictures that are
Blur
worse
pictures.
than worse than when my kid was 3, when she would grab our phones. Let me take 8 blurry pictures of nothing. I mean, to me, that might be kind of a big story, that the
I know,
Canton police investigating a homicide of a resident who was a Boston police officer. Boston police
I mean,
officer.
I can't believe it, Mark. I'm glad you. I mean, why are they leaving it to us YouTubers?
I
Why are
don't
they leaving
know.
it to
I mean,
the
that's
Glera,
like
Turtle
front-
Boy, Melanie Little, Sean on the Golf, myself? Like, that's what they're doing. They're leaving it to us.
but they're not asking also,
Boston Globe isn't doing it.
but they're not asking like the important follow-up questions, which is, how long have they been this crime scene inept? Now, I understand Canton is not the murder capital of the world, thank God, right? All that, but crime happens, and if this is kind of like the brain trust in charge of how we're going to do things, you might want to reevaluate that. That's not good, and the whole world is seeing this. I mean, they look like a bunch of clowns. I don't know how that's just not a bigger story generally.
I don't get it either. I don't get it. Like, the thing is, it's a good story. It's a real story, and it gets the eyeballs. Like, it's going to boost your numbers. It's going to get you revenue. So why wouldn't you cover that if it's real?
I was
It's
always
legitimate. It's everyone cares about it.
I was always like a wannabe journalist, like a lawyer who like wants to play journalist. And it strikes me like what they could have done today. This is what you do. You go find a real crime scene expert. Okay. You go find one of these Boston police, NYPD, who tell you how you secure a crime scene, and just rip this to shreds, or defend it if that's what you're going to do, if you think that they have a justifiable basis for the way they did. But
That's the guy I keep talking about, Sean McDonough, ex-DEA, 30 years. He's a law enforcement. He's right there. Like, he's everywhere. I don't get why they're not getting guys like that. There's a former even Canton police officer who would talk about it.
And they didn't get cross-examined on this, and I appreciate it. But, in New York and other big cities and whatnot, they'd have guys out there in Tyvek suits, where they like strap up, they look like they're preparing for the next COVID wave.
Yeah.
Where they
got the gloves on. Yeah.
And now look, snow is a little different, but meanwhile, they're making all these other footprints and they're doing all kinds of stuff, and then they're not observing other stuff. Somebody pointed this out online today. I thought it was a great point. I don't know who it was, so I apologize. But that there were tire tracks behind the car in the driveway. That might be interesting. I don't know. And which car was it? And what was the license plate? We'll never know because he didn't take the right pictures.
Unbelievable.
They did nothing.
Yeah. For a Boston police officer.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is shocking. I think their laziness and their incompetence, it cannot be explained as just lazy and incompetence.
No, and
it's something else going on here, and it's obvious to me.
And it's horrible for his family to have to sit through that and say that, our family member, our son, our brother, or whatever, they just treated him like some corpse lying on the lawn. And, I understand, cops don't deserve preferential treatment. They're just people who have a very important and dangerous job. But the reality is that they just treated him so poorly. They didn't give a shit, and it had nothing to do with him. He was just a corpse, a nameless corpse. He got no respect for the badge that they bent over backwards to give, to the homeowner and his crowd. And it's, it's awful, and everyone can see it. I think every reasonable person can see it anyway. Maybe not Grant and Wendy, but
not Grant and Wendy, not Kevin, not KP, who hates Turtle Boy so much. Mazza Media, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, Mike. We got plenty to cover as time goes on here, so I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
And you got your Mazza Media on X, Twitter, and you got a YouTube, right?
That is correct. Mazza Media on YouTube as well. Yep, X and YouTube.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow. I want to thank Attorney Mark Bederow for being here tonight.
Sure.
Are there any final words you guys want to leave us with? I've said that a couple times, but I just want to make sure.
As always, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm good to go. I just want to say stay tuned, and we're moving on to Tuesday.
I'm ready for it. What about the Attorney Bederow?
It's, I didn't think it could get worse so quickly after last week. And then today was the worst day they had by far, because I think the forensic evidence is just, it's in the garbage, or I should say it's in the solo cups and thrown in the Stop and Shop bag, and it should have just gone to the garbage instead of next to the SUV in the Sally port. But I don't know where they go from here. I think that you just have to keep watching it. And I'm sure, I mean, for you guys, it hasn't even started because, the heavy hitters haven't even come yet.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. After Friday with Katie, I did not expect it to be that much worse on Monday. It is, though. And I wonder if Tuesday is going to be even worse than Friday and Monday.
I don't know. I don't know how it gets worse in Gallagher when your whole case to wrap. Not, I'm not even making fun of him. I'm just
I know.
It's not even his fault.
If their whole case was connecting, I hit him, and then saying, look at her car, it has indicia of that being what happened. I think these guys just killed it today in a bad way. I'm not trying to talk like one of the kids where, we killed it in a good way. They killed the case in a bad way because the car evidence, I think, is already just so substantially compromised. And they're going to be left with all of these bad witnesses, the civilians and Proctor and Proctor Light, Chief Wiggum and all of
Chief
these.
Wiggum. I love that. Let me ask you a thing. One last thing.
Sure.
Because we know the FBI is watching. The FBI asked the Karen Reed defense to try to push the trial back. It seems like because they're working on something. That's my take on that. I mean, it seems like the defense has a big advantage because they have all this information from the feds, so they know what's going on. What do you think the feds are thinking right now? The feds loving what's going on?
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what alleviates the pressure and the hard decision making. And this is a big deal. And, this wouldn't be the case if this was maybe a less fortunate defendant. And that's got nothing to do with her. She's not in jail. Okay. And if she was rotting in jail, then that turns up the heat in terms of we need to move quicker. And somebody, it's just bad that if for any delay when somebody's in jail. But if the feds are saying, we think you should delay, that is an ominous, bad thing for, the Morrissey crew. That's not good because here's the nightmare scenario with the feds. And I, again, don't know what they're going to do ultimately or not do, but the last thing they want to do, if they believe they're working on a case or an investigation against corrupt people, the last thing they want to do is, while they're doing that, have some innocent woman caught in the crosshairs and go to jail while they sort it out. Now, of course, if they indicted all of these people for corruption, I think, at that point, she'd get out for a lot of legal reasons right now that nobody even wants to think about. But that tells me that we want to do this. And the lawyer's perspective is, no, she's going through hell. And of course, the advantage they have, and this also happened in our FBI case, they really are tied together. They got the TUI material, which in that case, we got a ton of material from the FBI. And all of it, helped us. And I think back a few months ago when this stuff came out and they were bickering back and forth in court. I remember, I think the DA said, I object to the mischaracterization by the defense that any of this evidence is exculpatory. I'll tell you this. His definition of exculpatory, which simply means favorable to the defense, it could help. And it relates to credibility material too. It doesn't have to be like literally the issue of guilt or innocence, but if it kneecaps some of the witnesses, if knowing what we now know, the Norfolk DA's position is that there's not any exculpatory evidence in the stuff that the feds are turning over, they all need a new line of work. I mean, they're just, they shouldn't be doing this. It's too much power for people who don't have the judgment and don't know how to wield that power. And they've got a probably almost certainly innocent woman in the crosshairs because of all this nonsense over, are we cutting corners because we don't want to jam up, a guy who's a local resident who happens to be a cop and have really strong relationships. And whether that's true or not, there's no denying. I mean, it's come out already in court. They made zero effort to look at anyone else who did this. And, if you remember right before the opening statement, I told you, I guarantee you a word they're going to use is tunnel vision. And they did in their opening, because that's what this is. I mean, the investigators, in this case, the state investigators, they got whispered in their ear about something about her making some kind of statement. They looked at the car, and from there, that's it. We got our girl, and that's it. Like, next.
And they overcharged her too. I mean, they probably should have charged her with nothing more than maybe involuntary manslaughter if they wanted to go with the narrative that they were going to go with. And all of a sudden, they started just tacking on all these other things about a blatant. I mean, they talked about a 3-point turn initially, and then all of a sudden, it became backing up in reverse at 60 feet at 24 miles an hour. They just went way over the top, just trying to bury her like she was Lois Lane in the sand and Superman in the dirt, and Superman won. That's what they did.
The other thing, I'm sorry, that they underestimated, again, she's not some poor kid from the streets who is going to have no resources. And that's not a hit on, like, public defenders. Some of the best lawyers you'll see in trial practice are public defenders, by the way. But they may not have the resources. But did they not think that somebody like her and was going to fight for her life and get really good lawyers, and not lawyers from Canton, including bringing in some guy from out of town, which is the right thing to do? You have a great lawyer from this area, and who certainly knows Massachusetts law and procedure and culture. And then the next guy you bring in is somebody who says, I'm not from here, and I don't care about any of this crap, and you can't harm me. It's not going to harm me, right? I'm just here to do a good job. And, I look at some of the online stuff, the criticism, and, again, the Wendy stuff. These lawyers are awful. They should, they should be fired. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, these guys are doing really good. Okay. If you actually understand how lawyers work,
they've been doing great. They're phenomenal.
It's okay, Wendy, to be secure in your profession and compliment other lawyers who are doing really good. She's obviously not capable of that, but not just her. But the point is, they're doing good, and they're doing it the right way. It's a slow burn. They're playing the long game, and they're picking and picking and picking, and they're doing it where they're leaving clues, and the jury's going to remember it when they all tie it together. They're doing a great job.
They are doing a great job. I'm looking forward to watching them tomorrow. One thing I want us to all to watch out for tomorrow is Bev doing any better? Because one of the things, I wonder if she's watching the show, because we've complained so often about her breathing and her sighing. Did you notice it's kind of stopped today?
She probably had the mute button going this time.
I think she found a mute button. I think she got the mute button. Now, if she does this,
I'm worried he wasn't going to unmute there.
Yeah, she forgot to hit herself off mute. Well, that'll be funny if she does it. Did you notice today, though, that she wasn't sighing?
Yeah, yes. I noticed that.
And it's funny because I keep going back and forth with her. I think when she precluded the photographs last week to Katie, that was a mistake for a couple of reasons. One, the Massachusetts discovery statute is virtually identical to New York. So I feel comfortable in just kind of talking about this. That's pure impeachment material that you don't even assume you would need. I mean, there only became a need for that because she gave this outlandish testimony where she was slicing so thin the line between friend and acquaintance and fighting about it. And so at that point, you have this stuff. And of course, you have the DA says, I'm not aware of this. And she accepts it without even saying, wait a minute, let me see this stuff. And she could have asked the lawyers, where did this come from? And God forbid they say, oh, it came from the Turtle Boys stuff. The judge could say, Mr. Lally, you guys have been treating him like the great white whale You know, that's your Moby Dick that you guys have been trying to harpoon for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
You were telling us you have no clue that this was coming and da 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 da. But what she could have said was, how are you prejudiced by this? You have it now. You heard the testimony. Didn't you prep the witness about, you know, she's going to get cross-examined? She keeps it out. When they go back today with the new pictures, right? I said she's going to say it's cumulative and probably not allow it. And then she starts with that, which is wrong. But the problem is it's new evidence. They didn't have it. So that Rule 14, what they call in Massachusetts, is not going to apply because the defense didn't have it either. And they did the right thing. They gave immediate notice to everyone and saying, we're going to use it down the line. And it's not for Katie, it's for the other witness. She's going to have to let them do that. But she seemed hesitant. Then I thought earlier in the day today that she was sustaining a lot of the Albert stuff, which I thought was not proper. I mean, they have a right to say, do you know them? Do you know them? But then, of course, it really tilted at the end where I think she recognizes whether it's she wants to or because she has to under the law.
Or she get overruled. Yep.
I mean, now you're getting like real concrete evidence of bias. I mean, I'm willing to like fight for the guy and, you know, crack skulls and risk getting in trouble and sued and probably, you know, illegally arrest and handcuff these, you know, the Lapolito brothers or whatever we're calling these guys.
One of them might come up now, right? We're gonna get to see the famous Mark. I can't even say the name. Lapolito.
I'm not sure. I mean, look, they would know.
Lapolito. Yeah.
Lapolito. Yeah.
Lapolito.
That seems risky to me. I'm surprised that they want to prove this out that far.
Yeah. We'll see. That I'm sure they've talked to him. I'm sure they.
Oh yeah, no. Look, again, you give these lawyers the benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
but there's always risk when you pull out, you know, some guy like that. I mean, I don't know what he is.
Yeah.
He, you know,
he likes to get in fights apparently with cops.
And you know, you don't want him to be crude, and you know, that's that fucking cop who did. You know, it's
yeah.
But again, I think these guys clearly are prepared. They know what they're doing.
Exactly.
And I think also, unlike Lally, they read the room. They'll make that call and adjust. You know, they're able to pivot. And you look at the DA, and this is the zombie prosecutor.
Yeah, he's just plods along. Just plods
along. It's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's got nothing else. I mean, what else is he going to do? He's Adam Lally. He's not, you know, Jackson and Yannetti and Little.
No.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. This has been great. Another great night review, and people are very happy about it. I hope you guys come back and do it again with us.
Sure.
Yep. Sounds good, Mike. Mark, take care of yourself.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Cherry at the coffin for Mark.
What's that?
Cherry at the coffin
yeah. That.
Lots of fun.
What a weirdo. What a weirdo. And on that note,
have a good night, guys.
Have a good evening. Free Karen Reid.
Free Karen Reid. I want to thank everyone who's been listening to the show tonight and watching along and commenting. We had quite a few super chats. I want to thank you all for the super chats tonight. Someone was asking in the chat, I noticed, for the Venmo. If you want to contribute in the Venmo, it's Mike Crawford, TYJ, like the Young Jerks. Mike Crawford, TYJ. And I'm just going to check that tonight and see if any donations came in, if I have to thank anyone. Laurel gave some money earlier, and she did want me to read the message. So I'm not going to. Thank you so much, Laurel. And I think that might be it. I just want to check the Cash App. Looks like a couple. One came in from V13. Sent $5 for your channel. Thanks. Keep it up. Thank you so much. And I just want to put up all the super chats and make sure that we showed them all. Dreamer Thinker, thank you so much. Some guy with cancer, thank you so much for donating tonight. Again, Free Karen Reid made another donation tonight. Thank you so much for the dono. They also got an X account. You can check them out. Brian N., thank you for the donation tonight on the super chat. And Stephanie made another dono. Thank you so much. Tiffany, thank you. Jeannie, thank you. Also, Sherry D, Amy in Boston. You guys are awesome. Unbelievable. Dag Nabbit again. Free Karen Reed gave another donation. Thank you so much. Dag Nabbit gave a few donations tonight. Thank you so much, Dag Nabbit. Also, Cam. And another one from Free Karen Reed and Sherry D. And it looks like I got a couple of Venmos that just maybe one came in. Let me check on that. Yeah, my boy J Max. I know J Max. He sent 20. Says for the Karen Reed coverage. Thank you so much, J Max. I really appreciate that. You're the man. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow night. I think we're going to do a show tomorrow night. I got to follow up, but I think we got 2 attorneys coming in from Massachusetts. They're going to talk about not Norfolk County, but Bristol County. Some issues that have been going on in Bristol County with records and lawsuits and SJC lawsuits. And I think they're going to also talk about Karen Reed. So I think that's going to be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. But just check our YouTube. You know how we do it. We do a lot of it last minute based on my scheduling and guests and confirmations. So check back tomorrow and we'll see when we're live. We're going to be live streaming 9 a.m. the Karen Reed trial on the Young Jerks YouTube as usual, and on Facebook, wherever you listen to us. Thank you so much. I'll see everyone hopefully tomorrow.